Progress.
Good evening, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Petaluma City Council and the Petaluma Community Development Successor Agency for Monday, July 1st, 2024. If you wish to have a general provide public comment on tonight's agenda, please fill out a speaker card. They're in the back of the room, and bring it to our city clerk over here. I will now invite Monica Aparicio and Ana Perez to provide information to those who wish to participate in Spanish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Buenas tardes. Me llamo Mónica y estoy aquí con mi pareja de interpretación, Ana. Estamos hoy aquí como intérpretes. Hoy este evento se llevará a cabo en español e inglés. Se usarán ambos idiomas activamente. Así que usted podrá elegir un canal para participar en su idioma preferido después de que le hayamos explicado cómo funcionará la interpretación. Estaremos usando la función de interpretación de Zoom. Después de que termine esta explicación, se activará la función de interpretación. Si usted está conectado con su computadora, verá el icono de un mundo en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Si usted está conectado con su tableta o teléfono, pulse el más y verá un menú que incluye la opción de interpretación de idiomas. Para escuchar la interpretación, pulse el icono del mundo o interpretación de idiomas. A continuación, elija su canal de idioma. Gracias. Thank you. We're ready.
Thank you very much. And may we have a roll call for the evening?
Barnacle,
Present.
Cater Thompson,
Here.
Healy,
Here.
Now, absent, Posake,
Here.
Shribs,
Here.
McDonald.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's rise for a Pledge of Allegiance. And a moment of silence. Moving into tonight's agenda, looking up and down the dais to see whether we have any changes or deletions, and it looks like we'll be following the agenda per our procedures. And first off tonight, we have a proclamation. I'd like to invite Drew Halter, Director of Park and Recreation, to the podium while we read this proclamation, which is for National Parks and Recreation Month 2024. Whereas this proclamation recognizes the importance of equitable access to local parks, recreation, trails, playgrounds, nature, and facilities for the positive development of all Californians and their communities. And whereas since 1985, National Parks Recreation Association has recognized July as Park and Recreation Month, celebrating achievements of park and recreation agencies across the country. And whereas the City of Petaluma Park and Recreation Department supports the physical, emotional, and mental health of Petalumans by maintaining parks and providing activities for all people through organized and self-directed fitness, play, and activity. And whereas parks protect the natural environment and open spaces for the enjoyment of all members of the community now and in the future. These green spaces further benefit human health by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, increasing biodiversity, and promoting the ecological function of parkland, thereby improving ecosystem functioning. And whereas Park and Recreation fosters social cohesiveness in communities by celebrating diversity, providing spaces to come together peacefully, modeling compassion, promoting social equity, connecting social networks, and ensuring all people have access to its benefits. And whereas the City of Petaluma appreciates our park and recreation staff, agencies, organizations, and volunteers for their hard work in maintaining local parks and recreation facilities across our city. And therefore, I, Kevin McDonald, Mayor of Petaluma, along with the members of the Petaluma City Council, do hereby proclaim July 2024 as National Park and Recreation Month. Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and council member, staff, and community. Just really quickly want to recognize a few staff that joined us today. Rachel Beer, our Recreation Supervisor, Kat Reisinger, our Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation, and Cindy Chong, our Superintendent of Parks and Facilities Maintenance. And again, just wanted to take this moment and acknowledge, while we take the stewardship of the parks, providing opportunities for folks to gather and play and recreate very seriously. What makes our jobs much easier and meaningful is the support that our elected officials, our management, our council, our community, and especially the other departments that all kind of are honorary Parks and Recreation professionals in supporting us carry out our mission. So we're incredibly honored to take this proclamation and appreciate you all and the continued support you give to parks. Thank you.
Tonight we have two presentations on our agenda here, and we have first recognition of Assistant Fire Chief Costa's graduation from the National Fire Academy Executive Fire Officer Program, and I'd like to invite Chief Schock to make this presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Mayor, Council, Community, Petaluma. And this is, yes, a recognition for our Assistant Fire Chief, Chad Costa, who, as you noted, recently graduated from the Executive Fire Officer Program. The Executive Fire Officer Credential is a 2-year program hosted by FEMA and the U.S. Fire Administration at the National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Students in the program learn with fellow fire and emergency medical services officers about the exercise of leadership in crafting bold and imaginative public safety solutions that keep communities safe and make them more resilient. Over the past 2 years, Assistant Chief Costa has traveled 4 times to the National Fire Academy for 10 to 14-day sessions, and recently completed a capstone research project related to emergency medical service delivery models in the fire service. Continuing education in senior leadership roles is a cornerstone to organizational success. Our Fire Marshal, Jessica Power, who's in the back of the room, graduated from the same program in 2019. Our Emergency Manager, Tom Jordan, who's also here, has a master's degree, came to us with it, and in the last 6 months, 2 other fire department employees have completed master's programs. That's Senior Management Analyst David Catalanato, over there, and Battalion Chief Matt Martin. Thank you for the opportunity to recognize our sworn and professional staff for their efforts and successes to help the fire department meet the dynamic demands of our community. Appreciate it. And Chad, congratulations.
We got to get you a pro. Yeah, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council staff for the support. I really wanted to point out this program was intense. You're away from your work, you're away from your family, and I appreciate the support of the fire department to let me be away so that I could get through this and bring what I've learned back to the department. I would be remiss not to recognize my family, especially my wife. It's a lot of hours spent, away from family, punching out papers and working on a master's program at the same time is challenging. But I believe in executive leadership. I believe in executive education, if you will, and appreciate the recognition. That was it.
Next tonight, we have a presentation on our bus stop maintenance program. And for this, I'd like to introduce Jared Hall, Transit Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of the council, members of the public. Great to see everyone. Let me pull up the presentation here. All right. So we were asked to come before council and give a presentation on the status of our bus stop maintenance program. So we're very glad to be here. It's always great to talk about transit and some of the exciting things that we've been working on recently. So thanks for having us. So what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to provide a bit of a background and history on how we maintain our bus stops. We're going to talk about some of the difficulties that we've experienced in recent years, how we've tried to transition to kind of an improved, renewed vision of that, what the future is going to look like for bus stops, and then takes any input that you have. So as a reminder, Petaluma Transit has 6 regular fixed bus routes that are running throughout the city. We also have 3 school tripper routes, which are targeted at the school schedules. We have 195 bus stops located throughout the city, and many of those are actually shared with multiple agencies such as Sonoma County, Golden Gate Transit. And in terms of what you can expect to see at a bus shelter, this is kind of the anatomy chart, if you will, of what we'd like to see at the ideal stop. And so you'll see several types of stops throughout the city. This is one example of a newer stop. This is at the Hampton Inn on Lakeville Highway. But some of the things that we'd ideally like to see, you can see in the chart. So we'd always like to have seating, such as a bench shown there, especially ones going forward with a good back on them. You'll see a nice clean shelter with typically a metal back, sometimes glass or polycarbonate. We want to have solar lighting and safe, adequate lighting inside the shelter. So any time of day you're catching the bus there, it's really going to be an enjoyable, safe experience for everyone. We want to have a trash can so that the stop is nice and tidy. The stop needs to be ADA accessible with current standards, something that we're always looking to improve our stops over time. We want to have more information and wayfinding signage, such as good schedule information. And then some of the things that we are hoping to add even more, we ideally would like to have bike parking right next to the stop. In this case, not right next to it, but you can see a couple of racks behind the shelter, but in close proximity, so you can really connect your modes really well and efficiently. And then we want to avoid anything like sidewalk blockages to make them as usable as possible. So in terms of how we've maintained stops in the past, we've used a variety of different contractors, most recently a company known as ODES, Old Adobe Developmental Services. And what the work is usually entailed with the scope of work, it includes things like cleaning the bus stops, litter abatements, trash and waste removal and disposal, sweeping, and then general kind of shelter and bench cleaning, things like cleaning and graffiti. And then there's other things that come up from time to time that we contract separately, things like pressure washing and hazmat cleanup, which are infrequent but important items that we do have to attend to from time to time. And so some of the difficulties that we've had has been kind of maintaining the consistency over the years. In this case, we've been working with ODE since 2014, and they're a great nonprofit that we're going to talk a little more about tonight. They're, of course, a valued community partner. If people aren't familiar with ODES, they're under the United Cerebral Palsy of the North Bay umbrella right now. They were formerly located in Petaluma, currently in Rohnert Park, but they've been a valuable community partner for several years and a relationship that the city hopes to continue going forward into the future. So what are some of the issues that we've experienced? If you've been going around Petaluma, you'll often see many of these yourself, unfortunately, in recent years, but they're the items that we've been looking to address. So generally what that's meant is we haven't had stops that have been adequately cleaned or they've been impartially cleaned. They haven't had things like roofs cleaned, graffiti removed adequately and promptly. There's been a general buildup of grime at them. There's been overflowing trash cans, and overall inconsistent work and incomplete work. Responsiveness. We've generally had service performed 2 days a week, and so that's made it difficult if we have emergency situations and we want prompt service. Ideally, our goal is to respond within 24 hours at a maximum to emergency situations such as a dirty bus stop, overflowing trash cans, if not sooner if we can. But often the work has required multiple follow-ups from staff, both to go out and assess the stop, to see if a service request has been completed to treat it. And in many cases, staff has to do duplicated work to go back out to stops and do cleaning, meaning we also have to have additional staff available for that. We have to train staff. They have to have adequate cleaning supplies and tools and things like rags, because we can't always rely on the contracted services to do all of those things consistently on an untimely basis. In terms of sort of the contract management, some of the difficult elements have been making sure that work is completed. When we've asked for stop services to be performed, especially at problematic stops, and have them added to the regular service lists, we often have to repeat those requests. And so the problem is you get multiple public complaints about a small batch of particularly difficult stops to maintain. And unfortunately, that's something that we have to always react to quickly, which can sideline staff from working on other projects they're doing, whether it's a city staff to hire another contractor to clean them up, or maybe even someone working on the MV side, such as a mechanic, often having to put aside their maintenance work on a fleet vehicle to go out and clean up an emergency bus stop situation. And overall, just isn't kind of the premium service that we're looking to provide at our bus stops and really make them on par with what people expect with city facilities and their quality and cleanliness. And there's been a lot of duplication, as we've mentioned overall, and added cost that goes along with that. So the pictures really help to paint the situation. Unfortunately, these are some of the stops that we've seen in recent years. So typical things you can see are overflowing trash cans, a lot of refuse at the stop. In the case of the bottom right, it's a brand new shelter, otherwise it looks great, but has a lot of trash overflowing at it. A lot of graffiti built up. When we've tried to do the graffiti cleanup with prior contractors in the past, it often hasn't really improved the situation, or it's been marginal. It really is a bit more difficult to clean up graffiti than people expect. You often really need specialized tools and training and cleaning supplies and expertise. So in some cases, the situation remains, or it's even worse with a graffiti cleanup, and staff still has to go out again to clean them up a second time. So with every challenge comes an opportunity. And so what we did is based on the feedback we've gotten from council and a lot of the goals we have, recognizing how important transit is to the future, we said, what's kind of the vision that we can really take this to not just improve the stops, how they've been in the past, but really take it to the next level and start improving the transit experience. And so what we've looked at, we broke it down in a few categories. We want the experience to be enjoyable. We want it to feel safe. We want it to be clean. We want you to feel like you're riding a premium bus service. And we want that to be the same at every stop. We want it to be consistent. So if you go to a stop on Lakeville, Petaluma Boulevard, Washington, you're going to know it's one of our stops. You're going to know what to expect, that the stop's clean, that the service is going to be on time, and excellent customer service. Connectivity. We want to add more technology over time to the stops. We've recently tried piloting some real-time information signs that you'll see a picture of in a minute. We want to add more wayfinding and information signage over time. And we really want transit to be viewed as part of the overall active transportation network. Often when you hear that term, people are thinking of bike and pedestrian. Really, transit is a big piece of that, but it's an entire network we have to build out together. And so that's things even like electric vehicles, but definitely things like fare-free transit, which just launched today. So hopefully everyone's out there riding the bus for free. We're really excited about that. So please get out and ride the bus. And then, of course, a lot of this ties back to the climate framework that council adopted. Transit is a vital piece of the community now, but especially going forward, it's going to be more and more vital and vibrant to the needs of the community. So what we did in terms of trying to meet this vision, the approach we took is that we decided we needed a full-time dedicated bus stop utility worker. This could be someone who's available generally about 5 days per week, but overall responds within 24 hours for emergencies. We want the stops to look professional and clean, like any other city facility. We want them to be consistent with all the other parts of the transit operations. So ultimately what we did is an item was brought before the Transit Advisory Committee last July and City Council last September that was adopted, and that was included in the MV contract renewal and amendments. And what that entailed is we hired a new dedicated utility worker. And since that time, we've been implementing all those elements. That includes hiring that person, getting our own cleaning supplies, providing them training, providing them with the list of backlogged stops that need to be cleaned up. And it provides a lot of the benefits that we're looking for overall, such as that person and that service being more integrated with transit. We see them on a daily basis. We talk and hear back from them. We know when stops are cleaned. We're able to provide the exact training and supplies that we know are needed to keep the stops clean. And fortunately, we've seen really great results with the bus stop since then. And hopefully people have seen this going throughout the community. In this case, in addition to the regular cleanings we talked about before that have improved, such as graffiti removal, trash removal, we're actually able to do additional things as well, like minor vegetation. Here, a lot of people would probably go by the stop, and honestly, you wouldn't be mistaken for not knowing there was a stop there. It was so buried in the vegetation. Well, look how it looks now. It's a great looking bus stop, nice and clean, no graffiti. We got through our graffiti backlog and removed it at over 24 locations. We're looking to buy a dedicated pressure washer that was included in the budget for the upcoming fiscal year to really go that extra mile. And we're able to clean up outdated signage, get rid of a lot of the graffiti, and you can really start to see the results. And it's kind of simple things, you know. When you're going to the bus stop and you're waiting there, things like the benches you can see there, between the graffiti and the grime on it, it's not a place people want to wait at. It's not really enjoyable. Look how much improvement it makes just by cleaning them adequately and removing the graffiti. Things like these signs, you know, that had years of kind of grime buildup have been improved. We're able to respond a lot faster, remove graffiti within a day or so, whereas before it would take weeks to build back up and we didn't have great expertise to do so. So overall, we've really started to see the benefits that this has brought. The stops are now being fully cleaned. We're able to pressure wash them soon. The trash cans are no longer overflowing. We've really cleaned up our backlog by over 70%. So we're getting them to a place where they're great quality and improving them even more going forward. We're getting daily reports back. There's less of the staff time and duplication and paying for costs twice that was going on before. And really the most notable results are the ones you see on the right. What it really boils down to is increased ridership, which we've been seeing. We're at about 85-90% of our pre-COVID ridership, which is really great for transit agencies throughout the Bay. Hopefully, we're going to grow that even more with things like Fare Free launching and our microtransit service soon. But we've gotten way less complaints, and the perception seems to be up of bus stops based on what we've heard from the public. And so we talked before about sort of the vision. This is the kind of stop of what that would look like. These are 2 stops we just did at Kenilworth Junior High and Casa Grande, done in partnership with the districts. So what you'll see is you'll see a nice brand new shelter, great benches that are comfortable to wait at. In this case, they were actually customized with the school's names. You can see the Kenilworth bench on the bottom right. We worked with the schools in this case to help fund and partner on these. And it even has one of those real-time signs you can see on the left atop the pole that we are piloting. So hopefully the future looks more like this in terms of stops and looking even further at other types of improvements we can make, new stop designs, but making sure that they're clean, well-lit, hospitable, making sure you're getting the same quality stop all throughout the city, making sure we're responding quickly, and then starting to add more of those premium items, or real-time signs, maybe moving more towards mobility hubs, a term that you see more throughout the city, integrating things like micromobility, bike share, car share, other things of those improvements to really build out even beyond what a bus stop looks like. And then things like enhanced signage, overall making the process a lot more seamless and enjoyable. So we're really kind of building that vision that we have for the future, meeting the climate action goals and making sure transit is a vital part of the community. But at the same time, a major part of this is the ODES partnership. Although we had worked with them for several years for this service and to provide the bus stop cleaning, and we recognized that the particular work under this contract wasn't being fulfilled to the city kind of standard, we recognize how important they are to the community. And so we didn't want them to have, a offset from the work that was formerly being done by them, now switch over to MV, having a hardship on them. So in the meantime, since they've been given the notice approximately 2 months ago, staff has been working with them and having an ongoing series of meetings and discussions, including next week, to see if they have other services they provide that they could possibly work with the city on and create other contracts to provide those services. They provided a preliminary list, but we're continuing the conversation, and hopefully something we'll be bringing forth to council in the future to see if there's other partnership opportunities we could work with them on as well. And so that is pretty much it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. It's typically at this point when I bring it back up to council and see if anybody has comments, questions on your presentation. But and public comment on presentations usually goes into the general public comment box. But seeing how many folks we have in the evening and knowing that we divide general public comment by the number of speaker potentials, I'd like to invite the public to now speak on this if they so wish to have a comment on. I'd like to open a public comment period on this specific item because trying to get everybody's voices heard tonight. So if you have a general public comment, please fill out a card and bring it to our clerk, and we will do that piece right now before inviting the council to ask our transit manager their questions. And while we have a minute running on that so that you can fill out a card if you wish, I do want to compliment you and congratulate the system on having its fare free program up and running. That's just a big step forward. Appreciate that. And I think we are going to close our cards and letter part and bring up what we have from our clerk, so we can allow for public comment at this period. We have 5 cards, and we'll set the clock at 3 minutes. But I ask, in the interest of everybody being heard, that if you can be more brief than your maximum, that would be appreciated by all in the audience and dais. First to speak would be Nancy Cadena, and to be followed by Shelley Medeiros.
Hi, sorry. My name is Nancy Cadena, and I'm here to support ODES because I feel that, I'm sorry, Jared. I didn't catch the last name.
Hall.
Thank you. I feel like you were mixing a lot of things together, which were that with over 100 stops, you have one person full-time, that would be 40 hours, at 100 stops to remove all the trash and all the graffiti. I would like to have that person's name because I'd like to hire them when they have not been able to maintain those new pictures that you have, which included your vision of the future. And you have ODE's performance as a negative impact on your ridership, but you're saying there's going to be free ridership. So I feel like you're mixing apples and oranges because you have new shelters, new benefits. You've got one person who is going to do landscaping, graffiti removal. I can't follow this. I'm sorry. I realize that I'm old and people are young and I don't have that energy anymore, but I don't believe that one person with over 100 stops at 40 hours a week is going to be able to remove all the trash, all the graffiti, everything that you have listed. I can't buy into it when ODES has been given this their best shot. We talk about inclusiveness all day and all night. It's one of our favorite things, soapboxes to stand on, but this is real life. These are the crew at ODES. They are contributing to our community in the biggest possible way that they can. And I would like to have their support be continued by the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, it's to maintain decorum in the chamber. We don't prefer if anyone applaud because that would open the door to booing. So if we can remain a decorum, then that would go well. Shelley Medeiros to be followed by Alyssa Ransom.
Hello, thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation and the vision. I think it's great that we want to improve our city because right out here on this parking lot over here, I go to St. Vincent's every week. Trash sat in there for probably 4 months in your own parking lot, a shopping cart with trash overflowing, and my family commented every week, wow, the city doesn't even clean up their own stuff. So appreciate your vision. I hope it works. The new and improved photos you showed, they're definitely not in downtown Petaluma. Downtown Petaluma is overrun by homelessness. I know every bus stop that my son works at or had worked at because he showed me as we drove. Oh, I worked here, I worked there. And guess what? It's downtown Petaluma, overrun by the homelessness. You clean it today, tomorrow the trash is overflowing. My son would tell me when we walk on the weekends, I cleaned that yesterday. Look there's so much garbage again. How could they possibly maintain all those bus stops with 2 days a week? I think the best vision here, consider a partnership, as Nancy said. One person is not going to be able to do all this work. How about you partner with them? Let them take care of the trash, washing the glass, etc. Let's find a compromise. Working in the community is so much more to my son and his colleagues at Odes. They are given the opportunity to contribute to the community, which is so important to him, to be accepted, to be seen, to see people in the community and be thanked for his work, which he has been. So let's face it, it's a nasty job cleaning those bus stops. I think that these disabled adults do it with pride. And will a city staff really be able to do the same job and give it everything? Because it's nasty stuff. But they don't care. That's the beauty of it. So I hope that we can find some type of compromise. It's a very small paycheck that they receive, but it's so much more than that paycheck. It's them learning how to bank, purchase things in our own community, interact with people within the city of Petaluma and the city of Rohnert Park. Maybe they get a little extra money and get to go to the movie. Again, supporting our entire city of Petaluma. So I'm here to support them. My son's in the program. Tori does a great job. And, I don't know. At the end of the day, like I said, I appreciate your vision, but I think there has to be a compromise, and I think we can figure that out and come to that decision if you give it just a little bit more thought and maybe a little more consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Alyssa Ransom, to be followed by Tori Trentarowski.
Okay. Hello. So my brother is in the program. My mother just talked. I cannot say enough about how much every time I ask him, how was your day? Oh, great. I cleaned this bus stop today, cleaned this park today. Like she was saying, they take so much pride in their work. And like she was saying, I don't think that anyone else could take as much pride as they do. But anyway, so I live downtown on East Street. Me and my husband walk our dog every day, morning, night, twice a day. We walk downtown on C and 4th and all through there. One morning, it'll be clean from them. The next morning, it'll be overrun by homeless bags, clothes, broken glass, bottles everywhere. So I'm just curious how you expect them to clean over 100 bus stops every single day when it's overrun by homeless. I also walk to the SMART train every single day for work, and I walk past all the bus stops, especially the one on Copeland Street. And again, I think every single person that sits there is camped there. I don't think they're taking the bus, and I don't feel safe walking past there. And it's not because of the cleanliness of that they do. It's because the homeless are overrunning it. So I think the problem here is not the wonderful people at Odes. I think it's the homeless, and I think that's something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Tori Trentarowski, to be followed by Wes.
Hello, my name is Tori Trentacosta, and I am the manager of United Cerebral Palsy of the North Bay Oats. I'm here on behalf of my participants. I want to show them that I support all of the work they do and the pride that they share in the work that they do for your community. We have worked on the bus shelters for many years, and our participants, they just absolutely adore this job. I mean, it's dirty, it's disgusting, and yet they go out with a smile and they beg me to go out and work. They cry, they get upset when they don't get to. Today was a rough day for them because today was a day they didn't get to go out to work, that they had to find something else to do. That something is not going to be as meaningful as the work that we provided. While I have not been in management for long, I do feel that the communication could have been better so that we could have met the needs that you guys needed. And I don't feel that we were able to communicate appropriately. The last communication that I had prior to the cancellation was in September of 2023. And that was to clean a bus shelter And while I did agree to clean the bus shelter, we sent someone out immediately to do so, and I did send a follow-up back. That was the last communication upon this cancellation in June of 2024. But I also would like to thank Jared for offering us an opportunity to meet later this month to find a new solution, to give our guys some work and provide them the joy of earning that paycheck that they deserve to have as our community members here.
Thank you. Wes, to be followed by Angeles Cruz.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and council members, for allowing us this opportunity to speak. My name is Weston McIntosh. I probably know firsthand more than anybody around here about the bus stops. I'm the crew supervisor. Okay. The video I just watched was not a fair representation of how things are being done. I took over this bus stop shelters 5 days a week, running a group of 3 to 4. Okay, and since I've taken over, every speck of graffiti gets 100% removed. Okay. There's other maintenance people out there that are spraying it and allowing it to run down, which is destroying the bus stops. One of my key things that I have to be in charge of is the safety of our clients, okay? The homeless situation is a problem more so than what you guys are pointing out today, okay? I will not take my crew to a bus stop that's got 2 to 3 homeless people living in it, okay? It happens more often than you think. There's 5 bus stops throughout the city that there's generally always a homeless person sleeping in, okay? They leave beer cans, they leave throw up, vomit, everything all over the place, okay? When they are gone, we get in there and we're the ones to clean that up. I take passion in what I'm doing because I know my clients love working for the community. They enjoy what they're doing. Okay, I personally take care of the graffiti because I don't want our clients dealing with the chemicals that are involved with doing that. Okay, I take pride in my work. I have an excellent work ethic, and I do feel kind of slanted tonight by the video that was just shown. None of those pictures were taken since I've taken over. None of those pictures came from this year period. I can't speak for what happened before, but with the video tonight was not fair. Okay, that is not how we work. If there is someone at the bus stop, like I said, we have to skip over it for safety's sakes. But I do my best to reroute around, to go back to see if there's still people there or if there's something we can do about it. I oftentimes will ask my crew members to stay in the van close by while I get out and do individual tasks around people. But I don't want to disturb the riders that are there, and we do our best. We get every spider web. We get every piece of garbage. First off, we only have 42 of the 100 and something bus stops that you guys are talking about on our list of work to do. So there's the communication breakdown. If there's 100 and something bus stops, we don't know about it because we only have 42 on our list provided by the city. So we do our best when we are out there. I'm a little shaken up tonight by what I saw. I want to thank Ms. Thompson for the opportunity to speak with you and give you a firsthand example of what we do there. You're able to see the bus stop, but we do not leave until I give my team a final inspection notice before we can put our tools away and load up in the van. We spend anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes on each bus stop that's available. Thank you.
Thank you. Angeles Cruz is our last speaker tonight. And
Hi, everyone. I'm Angie. I am no expert at all and actually didn't come for this presentation tonight, but was just, I think, initially interested on like, wow, one person's going to do this, and that sounds like a lot. So I was initially thinking about, 5 days a week minimum. I hope this person makes a livable wage and all of those things. And then I hear, right, this amazing organization. So just a little bit about me. I have worked in homeless services before. I'm not an expert at all in that. And I'm currently working for an agency that supports people with disabilities. So like all of this pulls at my heartstrings. And I would just like to say that I cannot imagine how hard it must be to run a city and collaborate with so many different organizations, but I do hope that there will be future conversations where everyone can continue to collaborate and have everybody involved. I know nonprofits are sometimes really overstrung and have lots on their plates, but the SAFE team is around and available. COTS is also a great organization. ODES sounds like they have a lot to bring to the table and provide a great opportunity for people to have employment, and people are excited to support their community every day. So I'm just in support of everybody that loves Petaluma, just like I do, just like you all do. So thank you for your time, and thank you to everybody who spoke today.
Thank you very much. And that closes our public comment on this item for the evening. And I think I'll bring it back up here to council. And clearly this tugs on all our heartstrings, which is why we asked for the presentation tonight, to better understand the future of our bus system. And from council, who would, does anyone have a comment they care to make? Councilmember Healy.
Sure, thank you. You know, I have to say that when the MV contract came up last September, I certainly don't recall that it involved firing ODES. And maybe that was in there somewhere, but it certainly wasn't highlighted. I would like to see a real effort made to repair this relationship. I appreciate that staff is talking with ODES about other opportunities, but I don't know what those are, and I don't know if any of those will pan out. And I want to see ODES have a continuing relationship with the city, not just that we made an effort. And so I'd like to see them given another shot at this, and maybe there can be better communication this time. I would also point out that the Supreme Court's recent decision in the Grants Pass case means that we don't need to have people sleeping in bus stops anymore and creating problems for our cleanup crews. And I think that's something that should happen. So, yeah, I would like to see an effort made to repair this relationship. Thank you.
Councilmember Posake.
I brought up a few. This brought up a few questions to me. Can I ask the questions
Of staff?
Yeah, Jared.
Yes, please.
Jared, you know, we heard about 150 bus stops, and they say they've only been working on 42. Do you have any response to help us with it?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I'm guessing the list of bus stops is a bit old in that case. I know since that time, the city has provided more updated lists of the bus stops throughout the city. So I can't quite speak to what date that list is, but that's definitely an older list of which a newer one has been provided since then.
And I suppose, I mean, I would tend to agree with Councilmember Healy that we should try to repair this relationship. I don't think it has to be with the bus stops. You know, I think it's good to consider whether we'd have better success with a different job. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barnacle.
Yeah, that was actually my line of questioning too. Was can you speak to some of the other types of services that we've considered? You hinted at something, but maybe if the conversation hasn't happened yet, then it's premature.
It's a bit premature at this point. We've had email conversation. There is about a half dozen identified. I think some included litter abatement, park cleanup, or a few that I recall. We'll have a clearer picture on it next week. We're meeting with them next Monday to identify the different projects based on, you know, their experience and their skill set and what they would like to do that both makes sense for them as an organization, overlapping with the city and its needs and what we need done in our facilities.
Great. I'm glad to hear that conversation's happening because certainly want to keep people employed. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would add it's something where the city very much wants to keep this partnership going, is going to do its best to identify those items, see what those are, and if everything makes sense, hopefully we'll have something brought back to continue a partnership in some form in the future.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the presentation tonight. A great presentation. You know, I think there's many things the cities do, from our parks to our paving, but one of them is people. And when there's an opportunity to do things for people that fit in our wheelhouse to do them, every opportunity should be given there. And so I appreciate the comments and suggestion to continue to work to create opportunity. Thank you very much tonight. And that closes our presentation on this for the evening, which moves us right over to general public comment. And during general public comment, the public's invited to make comments on items of public interest that are within the City Council's subject matter jurisdiction and that are not listed on the agenda. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Depending on the number of persons wishing to address the council, time will be allocated in equal shares, totaling no more than 20 minutes. So can I ask our city clerk, have we had general comment items emailed into us?
We've received 7 public comments, which are posted on the website. And at this time, I will start a 30-second clock for the general public comment. Members of the public attending in person should bring their speaker cards to the clerk's desk if they have not already done so. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation.
So it appears we have 14 cards for our 20-minute public comment period. And so I'm going to ask the clerk to set the clock at 90 seconds for each speaker. And so the first speaker is Catherine Brabowski, to be followed by Rob Anello.
Yes, my name is Catherine Brosky. I live at the Little Woods Villa Mobile Home Park at 1821 Lake Plum. The Harmony, the rent arbitration voted on the in favor of the residents, and the day after, Harmony gave this notice to the residents. They want to raise our rent $1,100.95 a month starting September 19th. Harmony is in violation of the Rent Arbitration Board. They're breaking laws statewide. They put a lot of people homeless statewide. I'm asking the city of Petaluma get in touch with the state and shut Harmony community down immediately. They got away with this way too many years and way too long. Look at this. A day after, because the rent arbitration did this on June 19th in favor of the residents, said they can't raise the rents at Littlewoods Mobile Villa. And then they have the nerve on June 20th to have this notice out. Like I said, shut Harmony community down immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Anello, to be followed by Sandra Shand.
Mayor, City Council, I want to thank you guys that came to my event last year. I apologize for it being 120 degrees. I didn't call for that weather, but it happened. I'm here tonight because for the last 15 years, I've used the fairgrounds to run an event that benefits the community. And all 15 events, I've been allowed to serve liquor. And I know that the city, and I just met Park and Recs people, it's the first inning of a new regime. I get it. But you're leasing me the land with maximum security, maximum insurance, maximum fire, maximum health care and everything. First aid. And yet I'm not being allowed to serve liquor. I've had no complaints from ABC ever. No complaints from the police department. No complaints from no drunk drivings leaving my event. And I would hope that maybe this year I don't get it, but I would hope that the city council and the Park and Recs would be able to look at this, since you are leasing the property out to somebody, and make us responsible for it, because you are on the insurance. You guys are not going to get sued. We are. I am. And it would benefit the community. The only problem I'm going to have this year without being able to serve alcohol is that my beneficiaries are going to suffer, because that was a big part of our donation to the Polly Klaas Foundation, this year the Miracle League, and to also Memory Cafe. So in the future, I hope we can all work together. These are really nice people. Thank you for your time. I got these flyers here for you. Somebody want to hand them out? Put them on your refrigerator.
Thank you very much. Sandra Shan, to be followed by Jody Johnson.
I continue as a peace activist. I would like to know how you choose which Jewish voices to listen to when deciding to support a ceasefire resolution or not. Jewish American staffer Lily Greenberg Call recently resigned from her post at the U.S. Interior Department, citing her Jewish upbringing and ties to Israel. I can no longer, in good conscience, she said, continue to represent this administration amidst continued support for Israel's genocide in Gaza. She said the Jewish values she was brought up with led her to this decision. And, quote, my Jewish identity is the most important part of who I am, and it is all of the values I was raised with that led me to this decision. What Israel's doing to the people of Gaza and to Palestinians in general is incredibly un-Jewish to me and a disgrace to our ancestors. She said she's terrified by rising anti-Semitism, but that, quote, I am certain the answer is not to collectively punish millions of innocent Palestinians through displacement, famine, and ethnic cleansing. And again, I urge you to look at your conscience and your heart. Such human suffering only leads to more human suffering.
Thank you. Jody Johnson, to be followed by Kelly Walker.
Good evening. We come together tonight from Petaluma Mobile Parks to ask for enforcement of the many violations park owners are abusing residents with. These enforcements are not only warranted, but are necessary. With respect to the process of coming together to mutually agree on a path forward, the narrative that park owners are pushing is simply not valid. Legislation on AB 2782, in part concerning closure, long-term leases, and fair market value, took years to pass into law. Why was this legislation necessary? Large investment groups gobbling up what they call cash cow mobile parks were and continue to use long-term leases as a predatory way to price gouge ground rents and remove the rights of residents without them knowing this was happening. Some of the long-term leaseholders sit here tonight, many of whom had no idea a long-term lease could not be used after February 13th of 2020 because of this protective legislation. These residents signed away their right to rent stabilization, many who never knew rent stabilization even existed. This is further reinforced at Capri, who sits with us tonight, recently purchased by Harmony, where every resident was only given the choice of long-term leases. Frightening was the discovery that pass-throughs with no oversight were baked into these long-term leases to work major increases into the residents' backs.
Kelly Walker, to be followed by Chris Parker.
Thank you. I'll get on my toes. The other false narrative being pushed by park owners is that if only you let them have vacancy decontrol, they would stop the war they have waged on residents, or that if the revisited ordinance last year had not happened, they would not have upended the lives of these residents. Simply put, this is nonsense. I remind everyone that the only monetary difference for the park owners in their allowable annual increase after revisions was the removal of the $5 to $9 per month per address, or 0.09%. They were allowed to take the 2% increase under the ordinance. The city of Petaluma had their foresight in 1994 to pass vacancy control in their rent stabilization ordinance, and last year's revisions simply maintained that. Youngstown park owners, right after purchase of the park, sought increases greater than those allowed, even though they had just purchased a park, done their due diligence, and knew that the rent stabilization ordinance only allowed an annual increase of CPI at that time. Littlewood's arbitration decision, all 43 pages of it, speaks volumes to the clear intent of these large investment groups to remove protections, to threaten closure if park owners don't get their way, and to price gouge their way to scare and disrupt the lives of residents who own their mobile homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Parker, to be followed by Deb Vitelli.
This decision states openly that these attempts are unwarranted and that threats to residents are simply a path to eviscerate the parks and do harm. Just one day after the Littlewoods decision, park owners tried to do it again with an increase of $662. Only it's unlawful to do two within a 12-month period. To add more mental anguish and manifest everyone's PTSD, they sent a letter to the city to say they're closing the park. And the Littlewoods residents learn of this from a newspaper article. In addition, Youngstown owners have violated every part of the senior park overlay zoning designation, received multiple letters of violation, but these letters do not enforce. Just because they sue the city to remove the senior park overlay doesn't mean that they can make the park all age. We understand the overlay, the 80-20 rule, which has always been in effect, but it must be under the status of senior rules, senior signs, senior leases, and purchases as a senior park. It is not either or. If one does not like the zoning overlay, they can't just run the park any way they want.
Deb Vitelli, to be followed by Angie Cruz.
They cannot run the park any way they want. It is still a senior park overlay, zoning designated in effect since October of last year, and many violations exist daily. Pretending it doesn't exist or willingly leading buyers to believe it's an all-age park, something owners and management know not to be true in fraud. Alameda County, with the same park owners, bad actors, they call them, not only enforced any and all violators, but told them that they would sue them if they didn't remove or resent the unjust increase and unjust attacks on the residents. Our park owners in Alameda County were made to withdraw their unlawful increase and under watchful eyes from the community of Alameda. We ask for the city of Petaluma to become our liaison in our ownership. This war against us must cease. We own our mobile homes. We are citizens of a beautiful city seeking to live peacefully.
Thank you. Angie Cruz, to be followed by Marie Cuneo.
We are citizens of this beautiful city seeking to live peacefully. We can no longer sugarcoat the mental and physical abuse being waged on mobile home park residents simply because we are advocating against the price gouging. The city has been a partner in positive change and positive protection, and we are grateful. Let's take the next steps to take enforcement and ownership. That was the rest of that. I'm Angie from Littlewoods, and I want to be grateful to you all. Thank you for your support, and we hope that you can continue. I'm going to continue reading this. City Council, what is and has been happening in mobile home parks in Petaluma must stop. Attempts at raising ground rents up to 330%, 3 arbitrations, 2 potential closure notices without lawful applications. 1 potential closure letter without application, change of park status from senior park to all age, never properly noticed or corrected or nullified by the senior park zoning overlay, false narratives by owners that the city of Petaluma is out of control with their revisions, false narrative that the city of Petaluma is the bully. That's the false narrative. We know that you all are here to protect us.
Thank you. Marie Cuneo, to be followed by Janice Barker.
Thank you. I have to get it right. The unlawful inspections tied to 7 and 30-day notices of violations, threats against advocates helping on our behalf, abuse, elder abuse, coercion into long-term leases, discrimination, disregard for senior citizens, disregard for our rights, and 2 lawsuits against the city, one of those which has been dismissed. We are battleground fatigued, but stand together to fight these egregious attacks on our rights as owners of property merely renting the land. We are thankful to the city carefully and thoughtfully examining the rights, the laws, and the truth. We know who the bullies are, and we must stand up to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Janice Barker, to be followed by Tim Porteous.
Hi, I'm new to this, and I'm the person left holding the bag. There's nothing for me to read. I am a resident of Youngstown, and when I started there, I was offered a 5-year lease. I was not told that I could have a 1-year lease. I could go month to month. I was not told any of this. I think the only thing we can do here is transparency from these people and enforcement of our codes and our laws. And I would like to encourage you, again, I know you're very helpful, but I would like to encourage you to help us with this. I now am faced with an 89-year-old roommate with dementia. I don't quite know what I'm going to do with him if I have to leave Youngstown because I can't afford to be here anymore. He's irretrievably hooked up to Kaiser, and we have to be there. So, enforcement. Just enforce the codes, enforce the laws. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tim Porteous, to be followed by Sheila E.
Pardon me a moment. Angie, thank you. My counsel, I have seen you many times. I appreciate every one of you. And I'm deeply thanking you for what you have done for us. I do not know why you have been tasked with justifying what the state has for rules. I don't understand and I apologize. You should not have to do what the state is responsible for. They made the rules. You're just telling the people that are abusing the rules, busting the rules, and I swear, my place where I live and the people that I live around, we are under phenomenal stress. Really. I can't express more than what I am in what we go through. We still wait for the here it comes letter to our place. All of us. It's frightening. Hard to imagine. I don't think many can what it really is like to live this. And hope to God, hope to my city council that you guys might find a way to bust through this phenomenal mess. It's painful, but thank you.
Thank you. Sheila E., to be followed by Eileen.
Good evening. As a resident of a mobile home park in Alameda County, owned by 3 pillars, we are deeply troubled by the repeated disregard for regulations at Youngstown Mobile Home Park, which is owned by the same owner. It is clear that these professional investors calculate their financial expenses and gains before acquiring the mobile home park. Yet, they still disregard and disrespect the laws set forth by the county. Laws must not only be words on paper, but be enforced with consequences for those who choose to ignore them. Laws and regulations are meaningful with proper policing and consequences. So we would like to ask the authorities in Petaluma to take decisive legal action against bad actors who show disrespect for the rule of law. We hope that the city of Petaluma will hold accountable those bad actors who seek to operate above the law and ensure that justice and fairness prevail for all members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen, to be followed by John Robbins.
Members of the committee, good evening. I'd like to talk to you today, not just as a resident of a mobile home park in Alameda County, but as a voice for justice and fairness in the face of corporate greed and misconduct. The actions of mobile home park corporate investors echo across counties, repeating a pattern of exploiting residents and disregarding laws. It is clear that these are not innocent mistakes, but calculated attempts to extract and exploit more money from vulnerable communities. They show a blatant disregard for residents' well-being and for the laws that should protect them. We have seen the same story play out in different counties, a script, a blueprint, if you will, of the abuse and power of these bad actors that must be stopped. In our county, Alameda County, legal aid, HCD, and our county supervisors have had to intervene twice in the past year and rescind attempts of illegal utility charges and excessive illegal rent increase attempts. By the way, the owner of our park in Alameda County is the same owner as Youngstown Mobile Home Park here in Petaluma. Also, the recent news of rent hikes in Little Woods here in Petaluma is just another chapter in this unjust saga. And for whatever reason, Petaluma has been chosen as the testing ground between Harmony and Three Pillars challenging you guys. We ask you to take legal action. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker tonight is John Robbins.
Good evening. You've heard the litany of woes that we have to deal with these mobile home park owners. If they had a company flag over their corporate headquarters, it should be a skull and crossbones. These guys have no respect for what's going on in this city. They don't care. And basically, they're giving you the sign of ultimate disrespect, which is the finger. And I urge you to do whatever you can to put these people under the gun. Make it costing them a lot of money to be acting the way they are, because they're just awful people. And they'll do anything they want because they figure they can roll over local city councils. But I think Petaluma is better than that. So thank you.
Thank you. And that closes public comment for the night. I do want to say that we hear you. I think we understand your pain and stress, and we appreciate your presence and comments here tonight. With that, I'd like to ask the council members to make their comments for the evening, and I'd like to start with our Vice Mayor Shribs.
Yes, I'd just like to reiterate what the mayor has said. We are in full support, and we're going to do everything we can to help out as far as we're concerned. I know my mom got kicked out of her house when she was 16, so I heard about that all my life. So I kind of know what you're going through, because I've heard it many times myself from my own family. So yeah, we appreciate what you're going through. As far as the business, there were several meetings I attended. The North Bay Water Reuse Association. It was the first meeting in a year, so I was able to catch up. But a lot of projects are moving forward, including lots of money that Petaluma is getting for the purple type pipes that are going out. And we're talking about water reuse, groundwater, and sea level rise as possible topics in the future. Ag and open space, they've got over 30 properties now in acquisition phase, either beginning to end, and they can get through about, the target is 12 per year as a rotation, so I found that out. And there's actually 3 properties here in Petaluma that have active monies in play. We have, and then we have San Francisco Estuary Institute on August 17th. There's a workshop going to be on the sediment study that they're doing on the marshlands at Almond Marsh. I'll be participating with that one. I'll be presenting it as a PWA, Petaluma Wetlands Alliance docent to support what's going on out there from the vegetation part. And then Safe Routes at Casa Grande High School had a really nice meeting. Some of the local residents came in, but we have a whole team of folks that are looking at, including the city staff, are doing a fantastic job going to each school, looking at safe routes. So, and the school district is being very cooperative in the whole process. So that is moving forward very well. And then I participated in the status of women for the county and listened to the presentations, given reports back now to the city in both book and digital format. I just passed that on to them tonight. But it turns out that the number one struggle is housing security, as far as what's been surveyed throughout the entire county. Number two is like food security, and these are very big concerns of what's going on. And the most at risk, we have senior women and women of color, especially the single mothers are extremely at risk here in our county, and we need to do a much better job. So that was the report that came out from that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cater Thompson.
Thank you. And, I would like to get more information on the code enforcement, and I understand the problems because of the legal suits, but it just seems like there is a problem with problems in the park, and if it's illegal, it's just confusing why we can't do anything. I realize they're kind of their own island, but they're within our community, and we need to work with the state more maybe on making sure that these predators are not don't win, because it's not just in Petaluma it's happening. It's happening everywhere, and I'm not sure why cities are not working together more on this, on the legal aspects. So those are my comments on mobile home parks, which I could keep going on. But I want to just talk about transparency and a letter to the editor that was in the Argus Courier. The council is moving forward with transportation. So, transportation always seems to be the big discussion every single election. And I just want to kind of talk about transportation a little bit and why transportation has never been funded in this city. It's because developers came in, they had a plan, they knew they had the votes, and they never assessed. As an example, Riverfront could have been assessed. Horry Heights could have had an assessment, and that would have backfilled, so we could have actually had Caulfield 100% funded today. And then we're looking at this Eli Corona specific plan. When that was done, that could have been an assessment, so Corona would have been done. The city in the past has taken Corona out of the general plan, and by taking it out of the general plan means that we can't get state and federal funds as easily. When the 101 widening was happening, Corona should have been part of the 101 widening EIR, but it wasn't. And I think that's just poor leadership, or it was done on purpose. So we could have actually had a lot of transportation improvements in this town, but it happens because developers, they know they have the votes, and when Riverfront happened, the city manager at the time wanted to do an assessment, and that was rejected by the city council. So when we keep reading letters to the editor about crosstown connectors for the last 25 years, it's because the council did not do their due diligence by making sure that those roads were funded. And I just want to say that I don't want to go in that direction anymore. And we always find that we are in a corner because of past decisions. And I don't want to be in that corner anymore. And I think we need to look forward in the future and quit saying why we can't do things. We need to figure out how we're going to do those. And before development projects are brought forward, they need to pay their fair share, not the citizens of this town for poor leadership for 25, 30 years. And I also want to talk about the Greenway project that was an important project for Petaluma. Apparently, there is a plan for a development there, which should go underneath the Rainier undercrossing. And it's a huge development. And I am part of District 1, and I would certainly like the council member that showed it to another council member, that plan. I'd like to see that plan too, because that is, that's transparency. And as a matter of fact, I'd like it presented to the entire council so we can all hear what the presentation was. And with that, I was also at the same event that John was for the status of women. And I was at the groundwater meeting recently, and John talked about the purple pipes. So we're moving forward with the purple pipes, but we're really looking at our groundwater and seeing how much groundwater we're really going to have for the future. So there's a lot going on with that group. And, you know, water is very important. And with that, I just want to urge people, you know, even though we're not in a drought, really think twice about how we use water, because I'm looking at myself and I know that I can do a lot better than I'm doing right now, because the drought's gone, you kind of forget. And I just want people to realize that water is gold, and we need to think about it every time we turn on the spigot or whatever we're doing, that we try and conserve. And thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Barnacle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few things to mention. I was at the Sonoma County Conservation Action Gala this year, and we had three local folks get 2 awards. The first was Elizabeth Howland, who got the Bill and Lucy Cordum Award for all of her tireless work with Friends of the Petaluma River over the years. And Chip and Margie Helm got the Local Heroes Award for doing everything under the sun for everybody who lives in southern Sonoma County for so many years. So again, big ups for that. Want to say thank you to everybody who made the fair go off. I know it wasn't easy. There was definitely a lot of pivots and things like that along the way, but everything I've heard is it went pretty well. Thanks to everybody who helped put out the fire, our fire department, but also the local residents. I was told that the Speedway even emptied their water truck. I was at the races this weekend, and he said, I learned early on that an empty water truck, there's nothing more useless. And so I think about that for sure. And then 4th of July, we've got a great program planned in Petaluma this week. We've got a bike parade that goes from Prince Park to Lucchese Park starting at 10:30 a.m. Then from 11 to 2, there's going to be all kinds of activities at Lucchese Park, including the dog costume contest at noon. And then we have fireworks at 9:30. And if you go to the city's website, you can actually find the best park to watch the fireworks from, although I don't think that they have my personal favorite, which is the top of the First Street Garage. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Healy.
Thank you. So I agree with the rest of the council that have spoken so far, and I'm sure the other ones will too, that we want to support our mobile home park residents. This is just becoming an ongoing saga. I don't know if the right analogy is Groundhog Day or whack-a-mole or some combination of the two, but it's just an ongoing saga, and it's I don't see any end in sight. And part of the problem is that you have this very incredibly complex layering of published court decisions, city ordinances, state legislative actions, and the state legislature always is coming up with new ideas. And I think the entire council wants to support the mobile home park residents how we can. I have to say the current situation is not good. And I would ask staff, maybe led by the city attorney, to provide us a memo on what some policy options might be, what best practices are in other communities that are facing these issues. Because, you know, there's 500 cities in the state of California. We're not the only one in this situation. And maybe Cal Cities needs to put together a working group on that. I can ask for that if there would be interest, because I'm on that board. In other matters, I think everyone is aware of the grants pass decision, which I mentioned earlier. And I don't think that's going to change a lot in Petaluma, but because we want to be very supportive of our homeless population, but it does allow us to prevent another steamer landing situation from developing in the future. And maybe bus stops are another thing we could be looking at, as I mentioned earlier. And I know everyone on the council is aware that the California Business Roundtable initiative was kicked off the ballot by the California Supreme Court. So that's a huge sigh of relief for cities and counties around the state. And it's one thing we don't have to worry about. In fact, the recent fire measure would have been threatened by that one because it had a retroactive feature to it. So if that had passed, that would have been bad for that. I can say that I serve on the Governance, Transparency and Labor Relations Committee of Cal Cities. We met last week, and we had a very in-depth dive on how artificial intelligence is going to change investing opportunities for CalPERS. And I'm not going to even attempt to summarize that. Let's just say it's complicated. And then the Legislative Committee of the Sonoma County Mayors and Council Members Association met last Friday in Santa Rosa. And as usual, the legislature is up to a lot of mischief. We were not able to take action on Friday because we lacked a quorum. So hopefully in July, we'll actually get that quorum and we can move forward. I just wanted to respond very briefly to a couple of Ms. Cater-Thompson's comments. Developments over the last several years in town, Corey Heights, Riverfront, everything else, has been required to pay development impact fees, and they do pay development impact fees. And one of those is the traffic development impact fee. And the champion for jacking those up as high as they possibly could be was, wait for it, former Mayor David Glass. And so, they have not been updated in a few years now, probably at least 4, to reflect new cost estimates for some of the things that are in there, including the 2 crosstown connectors. But those were fully baked into the impact fees that everyone has been spending over the years. And I have to say, with respect to the Acclaim application under SB 330, I think we were notified of that by staff when that rolled in many months ago, and nothing has moved, and I'm not aware of any presentation. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Pozike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I attended a luncheon put on by our Home First partners in appreciation for landlords. They've been working on recruiting new landlords, most specifically for Section 8 voucher holders, but also others. And they gave one award to COTS, our local partner. And COTS then after that presented me with an award for our city of Petaluma. It says here, this certificate is awarded to the City of Petaluma, certifying that they've been a valued partner to COTS, demonstrating exceptional kindness and generosity. So I'm going to pass this on to our city clerk and also add to Mr. Healy's comments that I hope the grants pass decision doesn't significantly affect our approach to homelessness. I know we're not perfect. I also would feel necessary to say that I hate to see us involved in a choosing a side, in some of the comments that were made about OADS and homeless folks. I think these are issues that we need to deal with better, and we're trying. Finally, let me just add that I still think we got to push harder for a ceasefire in the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of good content tonight on so many different fronts, but in hearing the mobile home continued crisis, it reminds me that there's a legal bill due for the defense, and it's not the city who does the legal bill. And so anyone who has means to support that campaign should get in touch with the legal founders. Don't forget, your effort depends on your having good representation. So connect with people who can help continue that. And then, certainly we, in this regard of what transportation improvements need to be made, we're in a conundrum. I mean, we're in a housing crisis trying to facilitate housing. We want to have the fees to do what we want. That is a conundrum. Opposite thoughts, but we do have housing built in one of the major project areas in town, and we don't have housing built where the other access road are. I think we got to solve the one where we already put people. So appreciate staff's budget efforts this year to focus on the one area and hopefully drive to a conclusion on one of the underfunded projects. And then, of course, I appreciate Councilmember Barnacle's comments on how this city celebrates the 4th of July. We do it really well. And we start the day with bell ringing at our own Carnegie Library Museum downtown at 10 a.m. So first off on the list of many fun things to do that day. And the bell ringing tradition started in 1962 nationally. And Petaluma is one of the cities that strongly continues that effort to represent our freedom that way. I'd like to invite our city manager, welcome her back, and invite her to make comments.
I want to thank you, Mayor and Council and community. I want to thank the team, Brian Cochran and team, for holding down the fort while I took some vacation. Really appreciate that. Councilmember Barnacle and Mayor, thank you so much for bringing up. I had 4th of July on my list, so I will cross that off, but I really hope folks check out the map we do have on our website, and also to look for viewing areas, but we should be adding Councilmember Barnacle's list on there too. So, and anybody else who has any ideas, we do add to that list year over year. But tomorrow evening, our police department will be hosting a military equipment display and community engagement meeting regarding our military equipment use policy and annual report. It will be kicked off. It starts at 5 p.m. out in the parking lot right there by our Civic Green, and will continue here in City Council chambers for hopefully a little cooler, and hopefully our AC is working for the meeting. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to police department, but hope to see you there. And just again, want to thank Parks and Rec for putting together a great 4th of July celebration, as you always do. We're really looking forward to launching the fireworks from the fairgrounds and having a ton of day-long festivities. So thank you for doing that. And that concludes my comments for this evening. Thank you.
And from our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. What you heard tonight, we have been hearing too from our residents, both directly and with the help of our colleagues in our housing division. So just a quick update for you tonight. Our direction from the council has been clear. It's still clear tonight. I don't expect it to become unclear that staff are directed to continue to ensure that the city's mobile home related regulations serve their intended purpose, which is to provide for housing stability and preserve the investment of residents in their homes in accordance with applicable law. And that's what we intend to do. As was mentioned, one of the lawsuits that had been brought concerning the city's regulations has been dismissed. Another, we have partly prevailed with respect to another, and we will continue to defend that litigation. I believe we'll be successful. We also heard about park closure notices. We've heard about allegations of park owners failing to comply with the requirement in our regulations that that new residents be offered rent control spaces. We've heard about announcements of rent increases more than one in a year, which is not permitted in our regulations. So we will continue to defend the regulations because they provide important protections to our residents, as well as ensuring that park owners can realize a reasonable return on their investments, as seems to clearly be the case since park owners continue to purchase the parks subject to the city's regulations, and since the most recent rent arbitration, the Littlewoods arbitration, confirmed that no increase in addition to that permitted by the city's regulations was needed in order for the park to receive a reasonable return. So it will not, the city's regulations will not be effective if they're not enforced. And so we will, as Councilmember Healy has requested, we are already planning on being in communication with the council to provide options, receive direction. In the meantime, I encourage our mobile home park residents to stay connected with our housing team and with us to keep us updated so we can address their concerns, which we will be doing. And that's my update for tonight. Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much. And that moves us off to our consent calendar for the evening. And I'd like to ask Council if they have any questions or concern on the consent calendar before we go to public.
I wanted to talk about
Councilmember Cater Thompson.
number 4.
And not asking to poll, just asking to comment.
I'm going to make some comments.
Yeah, well, then let's go to that right now.
Hang on, let me pull this up. I guess, hang on, let me find out where I'm looking. Council questions. So I guess the funding that's going to COTS, I mean, I understand we're going to go ahead and, move forward with that, but I'm very concerned about what's happening with the riverfront residents and the homeless that are on Caulfield and within Riverfront. And this didn't just happen. This has been going on for a few years. And now there's more and more residents there, and it's becoming a conflict. And this is what happens when you put a housing development next to a homeless shelter that distributes food, and then they go outside and then they eat their food and then just leave the garbage around. And there's been other incidences that have happened. And so, I'll be supporting this tonight, but I'm reluctant because I don't feel as though COTS has really worked well enough to manage the problems that are happening. And I really came in here, I really wasn't even going to vote on this. I was going to pull the COTS portion out and vote on the rest of it. But I'm willing to support this, but I want some guarantee that we're going to get some solutions to an area that is really impacted. And that's it.
Okay, good point. Good. And that's rising as a concern. Back to the city manager.
I was going to ask Karen Shimizu, our Assistant Director of Community Development, can you come and speak about the work that we're working on with COTS to address?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you very much for your comments this evening. We are working very closely with COTS. There was an incident a couple weeks ago, and so we gathered the community partners as well as COTS. We're working with them directly to implement some changes on their physical campus, which would allow people to eat their meals on the site versus taking them to go. We're also working if there's a pretty small number of meals that are actually taken off site, but they're looking at starting an incentive program where if community members return their the debris or the disposable containers that they're taking their lunch in back to the Mary Isaac Center, that they would then be able to participate in a program where they could come to Mary Isaac and they could wash their laundry. That's a big incentive for our community members.
Karen, do you want to talk about how Home First is working with COTS and talking about, it's kind of wraparound services. It's kind of multifaceted.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we're Home First as well is doing a lot of work in the community just to make sure we connect with the residents there. With that organization, they have flexibility in their outreach hours, and so they plan on making some changes where more outreach workers would be there around like evening mealtime in order to connect with people. And really, we look at that as when people come in to either get a meal. It's a way of connecting with them, establishing trust, and be able to work with them closer to get them enrolled in services.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember Healy?
Thanks. Karen, I appreciate the update that the council got in the email late this afternoon that talked about these issues. I had spoken with staff several months ago about trying to create a more inviting place on the backside of the Mary Isaac campus with trees and benches for people to hang out. Has there been any progress on that?
Yes, actually, they did put in place on part of the, they had a smoking area that was on kind of the south side of that campus. They've relocated that. They've put in picnic tables, and they're also looking at putting in more outside patio area, so that way there's more sheltered area for people to get out of either the wet or the hot weather. So,
And that's off of Hopper Street.
yes,
So it's on the other side of the
right.
Mary
It's on the backside of Mary Isaac.
Okay,
So,
that's great. I hope that can happen soon. Thank you.
yes.
Mr. Mayor, I have one more question.
Yes,
Well,
please.
the question is, you said that people would be taking their containers back. Does that mean that they're going to be allowed to go out onto Hopper Street in Caulfield? Or are they not going to be allowed to take those off-site?
The thought is that we're putting in more enjoyable places for them to actually enjoy their lunch on the site. And with that incentive of them being able to easily return their container, that they would then just stay there on site and enjoy the meal, and they wouldn't take it off site.
Okay, we'll see how it works.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Barnacle?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of moving parts right now, and it might be nice to have like a presentation item maybe at the end of August or something like that, after we see some of these things implemented, just to see, how things are working. And I think the community would appreciate the opportunity to actually comment on what they're seeing on the ground and how things are moving forward, if that's possible.
We can bring it back, and it would be the first meeting in September because we don't have a meeting in
That's
end
perfect.
of
Yeah,
August.
I think that's perfect. Just give us all a chance to get on the same page and hear the same thing from the city's point of view, from our providers, and also from the community members.
We actually have the homeless services item coming in early August, correct?
First meeting
So
in August.
We'll bring it first.
So we
meeting in
can make sure that's included, this topic specifically is included in the presentation. It'll be an update on our second year of the implementation of the Homeless Services Strategic Plan and the programs that we're moving forward within the third year. So we will make sure to highlight this area in some of those concerns and address that. And as well, all of our service providers will be here, so we'll be able, if there's, real specific questions, be able to have their expertise here as part of the presentation as well.
That sounds fantastic. And just make sure that the folks in that community there also get notified that this is going to be on the agenda, and make sure that they know that it's happening. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, we'll open public. We will go to Council Member Pozike.
I thought you saw me earlier. I just wanted to appreciate the efforts of both the city and COTS in this regard. I think a lot of changes have been made. I've been driving through there frequently and trying to at every different times a day. I believe there's been some improvement already, although I haven't done a controlled study, but I think we're working on it. And I haven't heard, although I hear a lot of requests for moving the meal provision. I think it's important for someone here to say that that's easier said than done. And in a lot of ways, no one can offer me a better, and I don't mean just the city, I mean in the community, no one seems to be able to offer me a better place, for it. So I think we're doing what we can. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And so let's open public comment on this for the evening, and the public is invited to make comments on items on the consent calendar. Be limited to, again, to 3 minutes. And I'll ask our city clerk if we have any cards or letters ahead of time.
We did receive 3 comments, all on item number 4. I have not yet received any cards, but I'll read the instructions to give folks a chance. Members of the public attending in person should bring their speaker cards to the clerk's desk if they have not already done so. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. The timer behind the dais will be reset for each speaker.
Okay, thank you very much. That closes public comment on the consent calendar for the evening. Back to council. I think we've got through both our questions and our comments. And at that point, we'd be open to a motion.
So moved.
A motion by Barnacle and a second by Cater Thompson. And a roll call vote, please.
Barnacle?
Aye.
Cater Thompson?
Yes.
Healy?
Yes.
Posake?
Yes.
Shribs?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Well, thank you very much. And moving to public hearings, matters for consideration are on item 6 is a resolution ordering abatement of nuisances consisting of hazardous vegetation and rubbish growing on public and private property, and ordering the fire department to abate such hazards. And to help us out through this, we have our Fire Marshal, Jessica Powers. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I guess I didn't change that part. Whoops. Vice Mayor, Council, Staff, and Community. Chapter 1070, Hazardous Vegetation in the Petaluma Municipal Code requires the removal of hazardous vegetation and combustible vegetation. This public hearing is a part of that ordinance that requires the City Council to provide a venue for property owners to voice their objections regarding the city's hazardous vegetation abatement. This public hearing and subsequent resolution meets the intent of the law which allows the fire department and its contractor to enter private property and force abatement of hazardous vegetation-related fire hazards and combustible vegetation if property owners fail to abate. Inspections of these newly identified lots will be inspected on July 2nd, starting tomorrow, should you adopt. I'd like to note as well, though, that we'd like to thank the community for their diligence in abating their properties. For almost a decade, over 90% of property owners have abated their lot after receiving our notices. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great report. Appreciate the brevity. And so now back to council for questions, and we'll come back again here. And let's open the public comment period by asking our clerk if we've received any cards.
We have not received any cards.
And would you continue with the messaging?
Sure. Members of the public attending in person should bring their speaker cards to the clerk's desk if they have not already done so. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. The timer behind the dais will be reset for each speaker.
And thank you very much. That closes public comment on the item. We bring it back to the dais, and we have 2 resolutions, I believe, tonight. One where all council members are eligible to participate, and one where Councilmember Posake will duck out of the room for a second. And first, we'll handle the everybody item, and I'd like a motion, if we could, from Healy.
Second that.
And second from Cater Thompson, and a roll call vote.
Barnacle?
Aye.
Cater Thompson?
Yes.
Healy?
Yes.
Posake?
Yes.
Shribs?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And at this point, we'll ask Councilmember Posake to duck out, and while he's walking, we'll explain what a recusal is. It means he has property within the abatement zone, and so there's potential conflict of interest. And with that, I would like to have a motion for the other item, other resolution. So
Second.
that would be a motion Barnacle and second Cater Thompson, and a roll call vote.
Barnacle?
Aye.
Cater Thompson?
Yes.
Healy?
Yes.
Posake recused. Shribs?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And let's invite our Councilmember Posake back into the room at this point. That concludes. Thank you very much, Fire Marshal. And we will now move on to item 7, which is an introduction, first reading ordinance to enter a lease amendment with Basin Street Property for additional office space for fire department administrative offices at 161 2nd Street. And to help us with this tonight, we have David Catalinato, who is our senior management analyst. Take it away.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and community. I don't have the same gift for brevity that my colleague, the Fire Marshal, does, but I will do my best. The Fire Department headquarters station on D Street was built in 1938 and expanded in the 1970s, and currently accommodates a 24-hour staffing of fire and EMS first response personnel, the on-duty battalion chief, and administrative personnel. And with the passage of Measure U in 2020, the fire department had the funding to augment its administrative team. And that is mostly great news, but one consequence of that is that our office space at the D Street station quickly became inadequate for our administrative staff. And therefore, in 2022, the fire department, brought a lease agreement ordinance before the council with Basin Street Properties for about 1,000 square foot office 2 doors down from the D Street station at 151 2nd Street. And this office space has served us well. It's provided office space for the assistant fire chief, the training captain, clinical support coordinator, and the city's emergency manager. And with the recent addition of our emergency medical services coordinator, however, the small space is now beyond capacity. In addition to that, as part of the public safety facilities strategic master plan that we brought before the council in November of last year, we identified that the D Street station needed seismic strengthening and interior renovation, and that project will repurpose the current administrative office space for optimal use as a downtown fire station for the next 30 years. And all employees from the D Street station will have to relocate during construction, and the shift personnel will be moving to a temporary fire station at 307 Petaluma Boulevard South, while fire administration, those who did not move to that leased office space, and that includes the fire chief, the senior management analyst, our administrative technician, and the on-duty battalion chief, they will need to relocate as well. And then since the renovation at D Street will repurpose that existing office space, they will not be able to return to that space. Now, fortunately, we found what we think is a pretty elegant solution to having a leased office space that already is too small, and then the need for additional office space to relocate the administrative staff that's at the D Street station. And that is with a larger office space that is not 2 doors down from the D Street station, but is 1 door down over at 161 2nd Street. And this larger space will, in addition to having offices that will be able to accommodate everyone, will also have a conference area and a common tenant restroom. And our plan is for fire administration to stay in this leased office space until the the fairgrounds station, the new fire station that we've identified, is completed, after which we will relocate to that station. Funding for this lease amendment is identified in the D Street Station Capital Improvement Program project for this coming fiscal year. So I ask that the City Council approve the introduction of an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a lease amendment with Basin Street Properties for the larger office space at 161 2nd Street. And if you have any questions, the fire chief and I are both available to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. That was perfect brevity. Lots of data there, and I'd like to bring it back to council for any questions for here. And we have Councilmember Healy.
No, that was a brief presentation for a complicated topic. My one question is so the last time we had a presentation from staff that talked about Station 1, it was our floodplain administrator, and talking about the decision having not been made at that time as to whether Station 1 should remain at the D Street location for the long term or if it should move somewhere else. But it sounds from this presentation that issue has been resolved and the decision has been made to stay at the D Street location. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I'll if the fire chief wants to invite him to answer as well. But my understanding is that that was considered, and because the renovations that we plan to do at Fire Station 1, that doesn't touch the living area, which is up on the second story, that means that as far as the considerations for sea level rise, that is something that will not get in the way of this renovation. But Chief, if you have anything else to add.
That's a pretty good explanation, as well as the fact that when we were looking at a potential $20 million renovation or new fire station in that area, that would be something we would be concerned with or look more into. But it sounds like the concerns we have with the sea level rise is though a concern, it's an end of century concern, and we're looking at doing a renovation for that'll get us through the next 30 to 50 years. So still a concern, but we're looking to be able to do a renovation at about 25% the cost of replacement. And so we're leaning that way. And as well as the historical significance of that fire station. We'll be going to the historic SPAR, I believe August 3rd or 6th, to do a presentation on what our intentions are with that fire station and really keep and bring back some of that character that was lost in the 70s edition.
Okay, that's good news. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go to public comment now, and I'd like to ask the clerk to read our messaging.
Members of the public attending in person should bring their speaker cards to the clerk's desk if they have not already done so. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. The timer behind the dais will be reset for each speaker.
And thank you very much. That closes public with no comments to read. It closes public comments. Back to council. I just had the one comment to make. Jesus, it sounds like this really puts the pressure on us to get that fairground station up and running here. Okay. And any other comment and a motion?
I'll make the motion.
So we have a motion from Cater Thompson and a second from Posake. And a roll call vote.
Barnacle?
Aye.
Cater Thompson?
Yes.
Healy?
Yes.
Posake?
Yes.
Shribs?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, team. And Chief Schock?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I just want to mention that though we haven't briefed City Manager Flynn yet, we do plan on coming back to council hopefully in the fall with an update on the fairground station and what we've been doing since the presentation last November, with where we are, next steps, and with some recommendations hopefully to come from council on moving forward. So
Thank you very much.
Coming in the fall. Thank you.
Moving to our next item. Item 8, a resolution authorizing city manager to establish an amended joint quiet zone and designate County of Sonoma as lead authority for purposes of establishing the amended joint quiet zone. And to help us with this, our city attorney, Eric Danley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be giving a brief introduction to the council on this item. It involves quiet zone regulations of the Federal Rail Authority, and those are regulations that address under what circumstances trains sound their horns when they approach crossings. Many members of the community may know that since May of 2017, Petaluma has had a quiet zone that applies to most of the SMART line through Petaluma, but not the extreme northern and southern part of the city because of regulations that require quiet zones to begin and end at public rail crossings. The same year that the city of Petaluma established its quiet zone, under which the horns are only sounded when there's an exigency, some kind of safety issue that requires them, like pedestrians or vehicles near the crossing, et cetera. Otherwise, they're not sounded. So the county, Sonoma County, established a quiet zone that same year, a little later after Petaluma, and since Sonoma County has coordinated with the cities of Cotati and Rohnert Park, but not Santa Rosa, to establish a joint quiet zone, which the regulations permit through cooperation of the affected agencies, to extend the line. And the county's goal is to, as much as possible, have a continuous quiet zone throughout Sonoma County. So we've been in discussion about the necessary cooperation to do that, which basically involves Petaluma relinquishing its quiet zone at the same instant that a quiet zone is established that extends to the beginning of Petaluma, also from the unincorporated county, but into the beginning of Petaluma's jurisdictions, and continuing beyond Petaluma's jurisdiction to the south to extend that quiet zone to provide for more community members the benefits of the quiet zone. And so that is the package that is before you tonight. An agreement has been worked out with the helpful cooperation of Sonoma County Public Works, in particular Johannes, also County Counsel's Office, in particular Liz Coleman. And we understand that staff in the county are prepared to recommend the Board of Supervisors approve the same agreement that's in your package tonight. Madam Clerk, I believe you have a graphic that you can share that will show, that's also the same graphic that's in the package and an exhibit to the agreement that will show, I believe it's a little hard. Are you able to zoom or no? I apologize, it's a little bit hard to see, but I think that helps. So I believe this is the, thank you, oh, that's beautiful. So this is the depiction of the existing quiet zone configuration through the county and the cities I mentioned. And are you able to, I guess you're not, there you go, super helpful, thank you. That's existing, I think. And can you skip to the next graphic now that would show the proposed, which is basically a more complete and continuous quiet zone. And ultimately, the Sonoma County plans to do the same cooperation with Marin County and Marin cities to accommodate that rule I mentioned about quiet zones only ending and beginning at public rather than private crossings. The last thing I'll mention that's important is that in the establishment of Petaluma's quiet zone, that was done based on improvements at our crossings that were installed with the cooperation of SMART. There's another way to establish quiet zones, but it's based on numerically analyzing the history of incidents on the rail line versus what's called the Quiet Zone Safety Index. That's a less permanent way to establish a quiet zone because if the risk index changes, the quiet zone could expire. So our quiet zone is not susceptible to that because of the crossing improvements that have been installed. The same is true for the county's existing zone and will be true for the proposed amended joint quiet zone. There are also provisions in the agreement that provide for coordination. Sonoma County would have to provide the city in the event that for some reason they decide not to continue to maintain their quiet zone. So Petaluma will not be in the position of having to reestablish its quiet zone at its own expense, should that be necessary. So that's the background on this item. Staff recommend that the council adopt the resolution that's been provided for you to authorize the city manager to enter the agreement. Again, we appreciate the cooperation of our colleagues at the county so that more people in the community can benefit from the quiet zone and will not suffer any safety impacts as a result, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Always good to see good things coming from SMART in our community. And any questions from the dais? Vice Mayor Shribs?
You just mentioned future cost type considerations, and is there any financial costs to going with this or not, or just this whole, for the quiet zone? Do we have to pay for it at all at this time?
So the only potential cost to Petaluma is the staff time involved in cooperating with our Sonoma County colleagues on their application as the lead agency for the expanded quiet zone. But that's a pretty limited. It's an in-kind cost. Otherwise, no any improvements that are needed for the expanded zone will be responsibility of the county. And as I said, we already have ours established.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's go to public comment period, and I'll ask the city clerk if we've received any comments on this.
We have not.
And please read the messaging.
Sure. Members of the public attending in person should bring their speaker cards to the clerk's desk if they have not already done so. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. The timer behind the dais will be reset for each speaker.
And we are not seeing a rush of folks who want to comment on a quiet zone. So that closes public comment. I'll bring it back to the dais. And Councilmember Healy?
Yeah, I'll move approval.
Thank you so much. Moved by Healy and seconded by Pozake. Roll call vote.
Barnacle?
Aye.
Cater Thompson?
Yes.
Healy?
Yes.
Posake?
Yes.
Shribs?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Council.
Appreciate the presentation. And that moves us to our item number 9. And that is resolution of the Petaluma City Council making findings of exemption for under the California Environmental Quality Act, ordering the submission to the qualified electors of the city of an ordinance to modify existing references to specific possible expansion areas, modify criteria specific to transit-oriented development, and extend the term of the Petaluma urban growth boundary through December 31st, 2050, and to make conforming amendments to the Petaluma General Plan 2025 at the general election to be held November 5, 2024, requesting the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors to consolidate said election with the November 5th, 2024 statewide general election and providing for submission of ballot arguments and rebuttals in related matters. And to lead us off on this, we have Heather Hines, our Special Projects Manager, and Eric Danley, our City Attorney. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Apologies for that agenda title, just to keep everyone on their toes. So we are back before you today to talk about the urban growth boundary and the ballot. Just for background, for those of you maybe who have not joined us for other hearings on this item recently, City of Petaluma has a long history of local efforts to manage growth. It really started in the 1960s in the 1961 General Plan, which really started to recognize the benefits of compact development patterns. And that continued on until our first urban growth boundary was adopted in 1998. And that has remained in place, confined growth and physical development. And while the initial adoption of the UGB had an expiration date of 2018, in 2010, we went back out to the voters and extended that to 2025 to have it mirror the adoption of the general plan in 2008. So that 2025 expiration date is quickly approaching, and so we are before you this evening to talk about proposed ballot language to take back to the voters in November. When the city first adopted its UGB Measure I, There was a number of objectives, and as we look at those objectives, many of those objectives are still relevant to the community dialogue and the priorities of Petaluma, looking to encourage efficient growth patterns, protect our quality of life, protect our agricultural lands, as well as our natural setting, and allowing the city to continue to meet housing needs, while also planning for that long-term stability of the city. So those objectives still ring true today as we were looking at this ballot measure that we are looking to bring before the voters. So in January, we were before the City Council to provide a presentation and receive feedback and direction from the Council. We did that, and the feedback from the Council was to move forward with placing the UGB extension on the November ballot and looking at an new expiration of 2050, which would align with the anticipated build out of our next general plan, as well as a little bit of buffer, so that hopefully this time the next general plan adoption could run concurrently with a future UGB expansion. There was also quite a bit of discussion around one of the exceptions in the current general plan, in the current the voter-approved ballot initiative from 1998 around transit-oriented development, and specifically around the North Petaluma station site. Now that that station is under construction, nearing completion, the fact that we received a grant to do a specific plan in that area to plan for transit-oriented development to support that station, we looked at the current language, which limits to 1,500 feet as a possible UGB expansion, and the council's direction at that January meeting was to look at extending that to approximately a half-mile radius from the station to better align with current standards in the way we plan around stations and plan for transit-oriented development. In doing so, the council also brought up wanting to have flexibility in the language that either this council or a future council, when considering potentially an expansion in that area, could capture an orderly boundary. So looking at the parcels along Eli in order to capture that, or at least have the flexibility to look at that in the future when a future expansion might be considered. And then finally, one of the directions from council at that workshop was to actually remove the other site-specific or area-specific UGB expansion areas that are currently referenced in the general plan. And the idea there was 3 areas that are not near transit, are kind of on the periphery of town, some of them in floodplain areas or high VMT areas that actually didn't feel like where the city wanted to focus if we were going to look at a future UGB expansion, not areas that met our current priorities. So we prepared draft ballot language with that feedback, and we went before the Planning Commission last month, or I guess now May, now that it's July, and provided a presentation to the Planning Commission, presented that draft ballot language, and the Planning Commission unanimously approved a resolution recommending action by the City Council. Planning Commission feedback, supportive of the general measure as was presented. There was a lot of discussion and focusing on the fact that the ballot measure itself does not expand the existing UGB, and that was something we talked about a number of times in that hearing. And additionally, that any modification to that exception 3, that exception for transit-oriented development, did not obligate the City Council to approve a UGB expansion in the future at all or those specific boundaries. So it was just creating that flexibility for consideration. As part of the Planning Commission's discussion, they did discuss different options than the half-mile radius. One commissioner brought up a 3/4 mile radius. Another commissioner brought up a more linear boundary along the north side of Corona Road. But ultimately, the commission landed on supporting that half-mile radius with a couple refinements. So they recommended removal of a 19.7 acre parcel that is touched by, and I'll show a graphic of this momentarily, touched by the half-mile radius, but they felt like was really kind of extending it further out into rural land than they thought was appropriate. They also recommended including 5 smaller parcels along Eli Road that are just outside of the half-mile radius, but to kind of give that flexibility to create that orderly edge, that orderly boundary along Eli as a future consideration. They also recommended reducing the maximum acreage. It currently reads as 100 acres. It had been proposed as 140 in the proposal, and it went down to 120 to match that removal of that one large parcel. And then finally, Planning Commission recommended a modification to Policy 1P36 to change wording from limited density to shall be of appropriate density. So just a kind of tweak to the language, especially since we are talking about, in this case, with transit-oriented development, potentially some higher density to support the transit hub there with the rail station coming online. So there is a long recommendation, as the mayor read, and that is largely the recommendation out of the Planning Commission and coming to City Council. With kind of a few more specifics. So a modification to general plan figure I3, and want to note that there is an error in figure 2-1 that does not show the expansion areas. So that is a holdover from the 2010 and needs to be removed. Which is the graphic representation of the possible expansion areas. And so the modification shows only the one at the northeast corner of Corona Road and the Smart Railroad remaining. Modification to Policy 1P32 under Exception 3, which is the transit-oriented development, to change that reference from the 1,500-foot radius to the approximate half-mile, and including some parcels just outside to create an orderly and cohesive expansion boundary. And again, this does not change that boundary. It solely provides the flexibility in the future for consideration of that under existing parameters of the UGB language. Coincide with that, an expansion to 120 acres to align with that modification, and removing the specific narrative outlining future expansion areas within the policy. And then conforming modifications to other policies to reference the new expiration date to December 31st, 2050, and promote internal consistency within general plan policies. So stepping through those, this is a existing figure I3 from the general plan. So this is what was adopted with the UGB legislation in 1998. It showed 4 expansion areas, although expansion in the written language of the measure does not limit expansion to those areas. It is just that it called out for more specifically than others. There has not been any UGB expansion since that measure was was adopted. So those still remain. And I don't think I'm able to make this bigger in the format I'm in. But what the proposal is no change to the existing UGB, but it's removing the 3, and it's only retaining the 1, and it's marked with a red star on that graphic at the intersection of Corona Road and Smart Railroad. So that would be the only area actually specifically identified in this revision. As we've touched on, there's 4 exceptions in the 1998 ballot measure and in the general plan policy 1P32. And so these 4 exceptions allow amendments to the UGB by City Council without voter approval under very specific situations, making specific findings and requiring a 6-7 votes of the City Council. The only one that is being proposed with any changes is the exception 3, which is the transit-oriented development. And again, that one has some limitations in terms of the 1,500-foot radius of the rail station, a limit in the acreage, and then also those 4 specific location references. This is the change language that is being proposed in the Exhibit A that is before the council for consideration. This tracks with the recommendation from the Planning Commission. And what this says is it expands it to approximately a half a mile radius of the rail station and sets a north border for which it can't expand. And this is the graphic here. So the graphic on your left is what staff brought before the Planning Commission. The smaller red arc shows the 1,500 feet from the SMART station. The larger arc shows the half-mile radius from the station. So the one on the left is what was brought before the Planning Commission. The one on the right is what the Planning Commission has forwarded a recommendation to be the maximum boundaries that could be considered in the future. And so what you see are those 5 parcels in blue along Eli, which is that top edge, being, even though they're not touched by that larger half-mile radius, those being within, but that large 19.7 acre parcel that goes from purple to blue not being included, even though the half-mile radius does touch it at the bottom edge of it. So again, this is what is written into Exhibit A as the maximum boundary that could be considered for transit-oriented development as part of any future expansion of the UGB. Another change that is outlined in the Exhibit A following this is also to Policy 1P32, and it's removing, you see on the right, there's 4 references to those 4 possible expansion areas, and it's removing those and only having the reference to the northeast corner of Corona Road and the railroad tracks north of Sonoma Mountain Parkway intersection. And this also existing language and to be retained is that the specific boundaries of any amendments to the UGB will be determined at the time that the amendment is adopted. So again, really emphasizing this doesn't change the boundary. It doesn't obligate the council to, in the future, expand the boundary, but does provide the flexibility for consideration of that in the future. This is the change recommended by the Planning Commission, a small language change to Policy 1P36, which was changing for properties adjoining the urban growth boundary intent of the city that projects developed in the city or requesting city services shall be limited density to appropriate density, as shown in the general plan land use map. And then, as mentioned, there are several conforming amendments proposed and outlined in Exhibit A. That's to do, to reference the 2050 as the new expiration date, to retain additional, reference the new ballot measure in 2024, reference the anticipated RFP for the specific plan for Corona Station Priority Development Area, and to change some references from Planning Department to Community Development Department. So really, not extremely consequential, but bringing everything together and updating as we felt was appropriate. So you've probably been getting some emails and letters about community support for this effort to place the UGB on the ballot to extend the UGB. We have been in discussion with Greenbelt Alliance regarding city's approach, anticipated timelines. There were several comments that came in before the Planning Commission meeting that were included in your packet, as well as several presenters at the Planning Commission meeting, including Greenbelt Alliance, Sierra Club, and Generation Housing. We have also put out information about the UGB in our community outreach newsletters as well as part of our outreach, and it was published in the Argus Courier as an 8th-page ad, both for the Planning Commission and City Council. So as outlined in your materials, the project has been reviewed for compliance with California Environmental Quality Act, and we made findings for exemptions under 3 different sections of CEQA guidelines, in that no physical development would occur outside the boundary and no adverse direct or indirect impacts would result from extension of the UGB term or the minor modifications to the language. It involves continuing well-established policies and regulations that create a boundary within which urban growth is limited, and proposed modification serves to further protect afforded natural resources and the environment as it has been since established in 1998. This is an outline of the timeline. So we are working with both our own deadlines and meeting timelines, but also the deadlines to submit the ballot measure, the arguments for, and any rebuttals. All of those deadlines coming around the election, the general election on November 5th. So that is what we are working on with. One thing that we did want to reference and was included in your materials and included in, I believe, the resolution are the dates and process for the arguments and rebuttals. So the City Council may authorize by motion a member or members of the council to prepare a draft argument for the measure. And that would be something that the council would do this evening if that is the desire, because it also, that draft argument would need to be scheduled to come back before the council at a meeting. And obviously, since we're working within the timelines that we are, that is going to need to be either the July 15th or the August 5th meeting that the draft would need to be brought back for the full council's review. Regulations about the argument that while all council members, any or all, could be signatures on the argument, only the top 5 signatures would actually be published and printed with the ballot argument. Alternatively, the council could also authorize that City Council cooperate with members of the community or interested parties to prepare the draft argument for the measure. And one final thing on that, The council may want to also include reference to preparation of a rebuttal if there is an argument against, so that that same council member or group of council members would prepare a rebuttal if appropriate. So with that, the long recommendation, you have a resolution before you making findings of exemption under California Environmental Quality Act, ordering submission to the qualified electors of the city of an ordinance to modify existing references to specific possible expansion areas, modify criteria specific to transit-oriented development, extend the term of the Petaluma urban growth boundary through December 31st, 2050, and make conforming amendments to the Petaluma General Plan 2025 at the general election to be held on November 5th, 2024, requesting the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors to consolidate said election with the November 5th, 2024 statewide general election, and providing for submission of ballot arguments and rebuttals and related matters. Just in case anybody wasn't clear what we were doing this evening. Also, part of that recommendation is to consider authorizing by motion a member or members of the council to prepare draft argument, which would return to the city council on July 15th or August 5th, and referencing preparation of rebuttal if appropriate. And with that, we are available for any questions you may have on this item.
Wonderful. Thank you for the presentation. Obviously, a big deal. The UGB to date is defining of our community, and so continues to be important. I'd like to bring it up to council for questions. We'll make sure we separate direct questions for staff from our later comments, which I know we'll have lots of comments as well as questions. So from the question side, Vice Mayor.
Could you go ahead and bring up the map of where the transit station is going to be? And you have those two separate maps with different parcels on it. Okay, there we go. So I'm just looking for a better explanation of what can be developed at what level to do what in each of these parcels, particularly referencing those outside the red circle, the larger red circle. What could happen there with the current language, since this is touching most of those properties? What could be developed in those properties that are mostly outside that red circle?
So there's a lot before us before that could even be answered. So these parcels are outside of city limits and they're outside of the UGB. So currently they don't have a general plan land use designation. They don't have zoning. So that's one of the reasons, a particularly important reason why staff is not before you today even considering a UGB expansion in this area, because we did not feel that we had the vision in place to support any kind of UGB expansion at this time. So that was one of the reasons, and we touched on this in January, that we felt like it should not even be considered for potential expansion until we have that specific plan, that we have the funding, the grant funding, helps define what the community vision is for this area, and then potentially a UGB expansion could be considered along with that adopted vision, the specific plan, the land use regulations in place to ensure that that area develops the way Petaluma wants to see it developed.
Okay, so I want to ask more specifically, because you're not answering the question. Given the new language that we now are going to adopt, could those properties along Eli be considered for some sort of change in development down the road?
They could, if the city council were to expand the UGB to encompass those parcels and then annex those parcels into the city.
Okay, is that what we're actually doing with this ballot measure?
No.
No.
Okay. I want to be.
Can I add another thing too, Vice Mayor? One of the things, so in other words, the city does not exert land use regulatory control over those properties because they're outside the city's corporate boundaries. They're not even in the area that the city could prepare to add them to within the corporate boundaries because they're outside the UGB. The other thing that means is that they, unless there's an existing outside area service agreement, and I'm not aware of any in that area, those properties are ineligible to receive city utilities, which is the huge difference. We just talked about an annexation action the last meeting. That's a huge impact on the developability, a huge determining factor on the developability of a parcel. So as the consideration of something being potentially added, able to be added to the UGB is just the first step in a process that would include the city's efforts to provide for what the pre-annexation land use regulations would be, and only subsequent to that process being carried out and annexation occurring, would it come within the city's jurisdiction, and then it will be possible to answer the question about what potential development could occur.
Okay, so I just want to be clear of people understanding, because I'm still not clear on where the UGB is and what could be, because at that, we're kind of expanding where you could develop. I think our intent is people can walk from within 15 minutes to the transit station. But outside of that, absolutely, I think everyone would, I would think amongst the public, would say we want rural. We don't want anything along Eli. We don't want anything going on past that red circle other than rural, because that would be against our whole concept of urban growth boundary. We had Corona as an absolute hard line for years and years and years. That was the hard line of urban growth boundary. We're going to be pushing out into that, and this feels like the potential is, we could push out to include this entire block, including Eli. And running down Eli Road now all of a sudden turns into housing as a possibility.
I think we're just trying to stay with questions.
Yeah, so that's sort of like, so I'm still not clear. Given what we're doing now, could that possibly lead to Eli Road turning into housing in what you have here? Is that a possibility?
Not based on the action happening this evening or even the ballot measure being approved. It doesn't extend the UGB. It doesn't provide services. It doesn't. It allows the council in the future to consider expansion of the UGB in this area. It doesn't obligate the council to do it. It doesn't obligate the council to do any specific parcels within this. It gives the outer limit that the council could consider in the future and potentially approve by a 6/7 vote.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Healy.
Yeah, just to follow on that very briefly and looking at the same graphic, would we be within our rights to kind of combine these two maps? And I noticed that the recommendation to the Planning Commission excluded 5 parcels on Eli, and that the Planning Commission recommended adding to the UGB expansion area, but then the Planning Commission wanted to remove one larger parcel further out. Would we be within our rights to exclude all the parcels that are light blue on either of these graphics?
Yes, the council could change the current ballot language to modify what would go to the voters.
And that's not so complicated that we can't do it tonight?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Cater Thompson.
Just to go on, talk about Eli Road, we really talked about the importance of keeping the rural area. So we didn't go expand into the rural area, which would have been Eli Road. And that was kind of a stopgap.
I'm looking for the question here.
Well, I'm just making a comment back to Councilmember Shribs, what our thought was on that. And so we did not want to go into Eli Road. We wanted to stay out of it, so that continues to be rural. And so we're not combining the city with rural.
And my question is, transit-oriented development or the term appropriate density seem very, very fuzzy, and that's okay because that's not what we're doing tonight, and it will be clarified when.
So the reference to appropriate density also references the general plan land use map. So in the future, and we would anticipate this with the specific plan to be looking at what appropriate densities, if we were looking specifically at this area, would be. So we don't have those currently defined because it's outside of the UGB, so we don't have the land use defined.
Would we be doing the specific plan, well, which would finish sooner, general plan or specific plan?
I would think the general plan will, I think there will be both going at the same time for a bit, but I would imagine that the general plan would be finished first.
And leave this open-ended.
Yes,
For the specific
plan,
right.
correct.
And we're able to spend our specific plan funding source on this outside of city limit investigation?
Right. So our PDA, our priority development in this area, was defined to have that half-mile radius. So when you look at the boundaries of our PDA, it incorporates this half-mile radius because that is really the standard in planning for transit stations.
We have these 100-acre, 120-acre, 140-acre references we're bantering about. If we have a good map, can we delete the line that measures that has the acreage in it? Isn't the map the definitive example?
The only thing I would want to look at is if I believe the way the acreage is written would limit there being any other possible expansion for other transit or under that exception 3. So it kind of puts, we've defined an area, but we've also defined an acreage, so it would limit another area for under exception 3.
So remember, the expansion areas are not exclusive, meaning the council in the future could choose expansion in a different area. And what the acreage cap does, it would apply in that instance too. It's tracking so that the acreage equivalent is consistent with the what we've discussed that's depicted on the right-hand graphic, but it would also apply as an acreage cap in the event a future council or this council in the future chose to expand in a different area for this purpose, for the TOD purpose.
Yeah, not an exception 3, but one of the other exceptions.
No, under exception 3.
Under exception 3. Even though we list only one area for expansion, there's a part of that that might allow for some other need to expand?
Well, again, because and the same was true before. So elimination of the specified expansion areas does really very little substantively except for express some council preference about where they feel the consideration should be given to expansion. So not only, as Heather has pointed out, not only does depicting this expansion area not obligate this or a future council to utilize it, it is not, the council, this and future councils are not limited to expansion with respect to what's depicted here. They could look in another direction as long as they meet the other requirements.
Even though they weren't listed as potentials.
That's correct.
There's something that arises.
That's correct.
Which is why the 5-acre exception has to stay in. I mean, I was looking at 5 acres. Let's pull that too.
That's under I believe, the affordable housing.
Right.
Right.
And that's still, the current thinking still might dictate that, require that.
Right. So any of the other exceptions, even though there might not be a specific location identified as possible expansion areas, that doesn't mean that there couldn't be a proposal or the council couldn't consider one of those under those 4 specific findings. So affordable housing, agricultural support, TOD, transit-oriented development, So the doubling up on exception 3, both in terms of the defining the area, but also the acreage, if you play this out and let's say in 5 years the council decides to expand the UGB near the smart station, the northern smart station, and takes in 100 acres or 120 acres, wherever the number lands, that would then mean that you couldn't expand any other area under exception 3 for transit-oriented development.
Even if an affordable housing mandate.
No, that's a different exception.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm clear. And then my only other question was, so in the writing of a ballot argument, if we have a council member or council members write it, it's ad hoc and not Brown Act. And then if we invite anybody else to participate with us, it would have to be a Brown Act body?
Yes, because the exception for ad hoc bodies only applies to appointments of. I'm sorry. Let me start at that end. The exception in the Brown Act for ad hoc subcommittees only applies to subcommittees made up exclusively of the legislative body that's creating them. So if it's a mixed committee, because it's a formal council action, even if it's a minority of the council members and not a majority, they'll be subject to Brown Act requirements. It's just a goofy feature, mechanical feature of the Brown Act. So if it's more, there's more flexibility in terms of scheduling and not having to do formal agendas if the council.
Right, that's what I was saying. It would be very difficult to get a Brown Act body together for a meeting or two.
It would be more constrained. It would be more constrained, yes.
All right, those are my questions.
And the council would still have full access to staff support in either, whatever it decides.
Right, thank you. Councilmember Healy.
Yeah, I had one other question on one of my favorite topics. State law would allow the city to incorporate Lafferty Ranch as an incorporated island, but we haven't chosen to pursue that because there's no pressing need. The county's not been unhelpful of late, but that could change in the future. Would this measure prohibit us from incorporating Lafferty as a passive park, as an incorporated island, if the council in the future wanted to do that?
So, what the UGB really controls is not our corporate boundaries as much as the areas to which we can provide services. The other thing I would note about Lafferty is it's already an enclave of the city because it's owned by the city and subject to our police power. So the county's not the approving body with respect to Lafferty. It is, for example, of the recent encroachment permit we were granted for improvements to the public access from Snow Mountain Road to Lafferty. Totally appropriate. County exercised its jurisdiction very helpfully and approved that, but the city is still the approving body on Lafferty. The thing is, developability of Lafferty is a very different thing from what we're talking about here in terms of constraints that exist in Lafferty. So this UGB doesn't provide for providing services, city services to Lafferty.
So we certainly wouldn't be wanting to in the future provide water or sewer service up there, but
I would anticipate that we would, and that would be ironic since
police services and park maintenance services.
That we already can do.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Because of our police power extends there. And I was just going to note, I mean, Lafferty used to be our water supply source, so it'd be weird to be sort of returning services back to it. But anyway.
Councilmember Barnacle.
Yeah, just one question that builds on the TOD comments. Is there anything we can do within this measure to prevent future development here from ever being sprawl? Like truly just being, extremely low density ranchette style,
Do you mean the expansion area under exception 3 that we're talking about?
Correct. Yeah.
So I think that is all based on that specific plan, making sure that we have the right land use designation in place, that we have the right regulations in place, that we've got minimum density requirements, get specific on the type of housing product we want. So that would be where the teeth for that would come in. And it's one of the reasons, again, why staff felt like it was important to have that in place before there was even any consideration of a UGB expansion.
Okay, that's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to public comment. Did we receive any cards or letters from our fans?
We didn't receive any ahead of time, but we do have several cards, but I'll read the messaging if there's any others. Members of the public attending in person should bring their speaker cards to the clerk's desk if they have not already done so. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. The timer behind the dais will be reset for each speaker.
So I'd like to invite Terry Shore to speak first, with Ann Hamilton to speak second.
Good evening, Mayor McConnell, City Council members, staff, members of the public. My name is Terry Shore. I'm representing the Conservation Committee of the Redwood Chapter at Sierra Club. In general, we support the work that's been done by staff and the council to put the UGB back on the ballot for November 2024 and to extend the expiration date for 2050. So we really appreciate that. And when Sierra Club does its official endorsement, once we have the final language, then we are going to be working with the community and Greenbelt Alliance to make sure that it passes. I'm starting to get a little bit worried that we do have a somewhat complicated UGB, and I'm just hoping that the argument in favor makes it very clear over and over again, as Heather has stated, that we're not expanding the UGB and that people don't get confused by that. We all kind of understand it. So let's emphasize that. I also wanted to, for you to consider that on other UGB arguments that I worked with other cities, in some cases, we've had like the third party write it and then have maybe one or two city council members sign it. So that would be another way of considering doing that without having to go through the Brown Act and having another meeting. If you wanted to include, let's say, a couple of city council members, the mayor and someone else, you could include Greenbelt Alliance. Maybe you'd want to include Generation Housing so that the community sees that there's broad support from different sectors. But just going all city council is fine too. So thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you. Ann Hamilton to be followed by Jake McKenzie.
Hi, my name's Ann. I'm with Greenbelt Alliance. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council and staff, for your leadership so far in ensuring that Petaluma remains a land use leader and approves the urban growth boundary. I urge you to place the UGB renewal measure before the voters in the November 2024 ballot to extend the life of the existing urban growth boundary so that Petaluma does not lose important voter rights. I appreciate your acting on behalf of the people of Petaluma to ensure that the UGB does not expire and that Petaluma remains a land use leader for decades to come. Thanks.
Thank you. Jake McKenzie to be followed by Omar Lopez.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, council members, city manager, staff. Somebody said the community. This was my community once upon a time. I lived here in 1972 when the Great Growth Management Ordinance was put in place. The mother of my children, Donna McKenzie, was on the first committee dealing with where the 500 units should be. So these kids are now in their late 50s. A lot of time has passed. And a lot of time has passed since Greenbelt Alliance, on whose board I serve, started their UGB campaign in Sonoma County. And in fact, when I was first elected to the Roanoke Park City Council, I was sponsoring a mini UGB, which was passed and then resulted in the 2000 UGB ordinance in Roanoke Park. Listening to the conversation tonight, I must say that I don't quite get the concordance between the UGB measure and the general plan. When we did that work in the year 2000, it was very much tied in with our updating the general plan, our designating specific plan areas, and then putting the measure to the voters. Now, I understand that you're a charter city and Roanoke Park's a general law city, and you do things a wee bit differently down here. I was, I guess, surprised at the requirement that you could change the UGB, but it takes 6 votes out of 7. So it's a different world, and I would confess to that. It's obviously important to renew this, and so I would certainly be commending your action on that. I need to do more homework, obviously, on how your general plan and specific plans contained therein mesh with this measure once it's passed. And I'm always ready to be educated, but it's a pleasure to be in front of you, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Omar Lopez.
Good afternoon, Mayor McDonald, City Council, members and staff. My name is Omar Lopez. I'm the Senior Program Associate at Generation Housing, here today in partnership with the Greenbelt Alliance to express support of this measure, putting the renewal of the urban growth boundary on the 2024 November ballot. At Gen H, we envision vibrant communities where everyone has a place to call home and contribute to an equitable, healthy, and resilient North Bay. This vision is why we support the urban growth boundary. It is crucial in preserving the unique character of Petaluma and safeguarding cherished green spaces and farmlands from urban sprawl. The urban growth boundary ensures that the city's growth is thoughtful and sustainable, maintaining the environmental integrity that residents deeply value. Renewing the urban growth boundary is not just about managing development, it's about protecting the natural resources that make Petaluma special and ensuring a diverse mix of housing that meets the needs of all residents. It prevents unnecessary expansion, promotes efficient land use, and supports the community's commitment to environmental stewardship. By expanding the urban growth boundary through 2050, these principles are upheld, fostering a balance between development and conservation. Furthermore, the urban growth boundary aligns with the city's climate goals, helping to reduce greenhouse gas emission by encouraging infill development and transit-oriented growth. This renewal will also support the preservation of agricultural lands, ensuring that future generations can enjoy the same scenic landscapes and local produce that are cherished today. We urge the City Council to adopt the resolution to place the urban growth boundary renewal on the ballot. Let's work together to secure a future where Petaluma continues to thrive, where the environment is protected, and where every decision reflects a collective commitment to sustainability, smart growth, and creating a vibrant, equitable community for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Dwayne Bellinger is our last speaker for the evening.
Thank you. I want to say, first of all, since 1989, when I heard Peter Calthorpe suggest we have pedestrian-oriented communities along the railroad tracks, I've anticipated the train opening here. I was disappointed in what we've done so far south of Corona, and I was hoping we'd see more of a pedestrian-oriented community there. North of Corona is our opportunity to build a type of community that should be the model across the country for building a pedestrian-oriented community, cutting our gasoline use in half, having communities where people can have a vibrant life with parks and schools and all of that. Anyway, I just wanted to mention pedestrian-oriented community because nobody else has spoken about that, and I wanted to make sure those words came out here at the meeting. I do want to say that the plan as presented is beautiful. Thank you very much for the hard work, all of you.
Thank you very much, and that closes our public comment period for the evening. I'll bring it back up here to council, but I do want to note that we appreciate the wisdom of all those who participated in the past efforts and got us to where we are today. I think there's a little bit of challenge to activate more of today's populace and not continue to burden those who helped 50 years ago. To council for comment.
Mayor, can I just respond to a couple questions? Just
That would be
I
good,
figure if
useful.
if one member of the public has it, it might be something that other people have. So the reason we are looking and bringing this measure for council approval to place on the ballot separate from our general plan that we're updating right now. Originally, we had anticipated that those were going to go hand in hand. Our current UGB expires December 31st, 2025. Our general plan, we are working very hard to try to have it adopted by the end of 2025. So those just got too close. If we miss that deadline, our UGB expires. So it did not feel worth risking that. So that's why we are bringing it forward now for the general election in 2024. So that's one thing I think is really important. The other thing, and we talked about this in January when we were here for the workshop discussion, we met our RHNA, our regional housing needs allocation, within our current city limits without any rezoning. So we do not have the pressure or need any expansion of our UGB to meet our current housing. So I think that's an important thing to mention as well. And then I also want to emphasize that the 6-7 votes that is currently those 4 exceptions, that is not new to this renewing the UGB measure. That is from the original UGB measure that has been on the books since 1998. So we are not changing that. That is not a new aspect. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear for people listening from home or here in the audience.
I appreciate that clarity, that now is the right time and that we do not want to risk having UGB lapse, nor do we want to have our UGB vote on an off-year election year. So this is the important year. And it's, I really appreciate that you identified that the whole measure is we are extending, we are not changing. If anything, the exceptions are being reduced. It is very specifically continuing our practice at preventing sprawl and encouraging more climate-sensitive development than ever. So with that, I'll bring it back up to council and Vice Mayor Shribs.
Okay, pretty much in favor, but I'm going to go back to what I was mentioning earlier. And the public, when they see this maps and what you've said about the parcels touching that red line, if they touch the red line, we can talk about it. If that's presented to the public is going to interpret that saying, oh, this council wants to develop and make housing in all that blue area. That's what the public is going to interpret. The words that you've said, fancy legal terms, but the public will interpret that as, oh, we are going to develop that spot as UGB. So that's my concern. So that particular map, if there was any way, instead of saying the parcels that are touching that red line, but put the blue inside the red line and white on the outside, only inside that area could actually be worked on. So not just parcels touching, but the red line is a hard line, is what I would recommend, so that the folks know that we're not going to be developing outside that red circle, that we're only making the circle big enough so a couple of properties inside that circle could be worked with in the future.
Let's give them a chance to respond to that specific.
Yeah.
Who wants to respond?
I'll start. So remember, the expansion areas are not exclusive. they could all be eliminated, and an expansion could still occur, subject to the exceptions. The reason why the Planning Commission has recommended what they have, the reason why staff recommended what they did to the Planning Commission, is so that the expansion area could, if all of it or part of it is implemented by this or future council, so that there would be a uniform boundary. We have seen problems that exist where, if the UGB goes through a parcel, that's going to be a very complicated parcel in terms of what can happen on it. And that's something we were trying to avoid. That doesn't mean that the council could be strict about the radius and let the chips fall where they may, but that's going to present complications for the property owners and what could potentially happen. Another thing I would offer with respect to the ballot arguments are an opportunity to provide, not in lawyer language or legalese, but clear language that's accessible to the eligible voters in Petaluma, what the real impact is. The other job that I have, if the council places this on the ballot, it includes direction to me to prepare the impartial analysis. And the purpose of that is so that the members of the public can clearly understand what is the legal effect of the action that they'd be taking if they enact that measure. So those are opportunities. The other thing I would say is that we already, this is our second extension if the council takes this action to extend the UGB. We had a previous ballot argument in favor, and my recommended starting point for the ballot argument this time would be to look at that one and see how, if it needs to be updated. There's some subtle changes that we've talked about, but that would probably be a good start. And that will be an opportunity to clarify what this action would do and why and what impact that would have on the community. Thanks.
Right. So just as a comment, because we're now talking about parcels that are touching the red line as being, because I thought the red line was pushed out to be inclusive of at least 80 or 90% of what could be done, rather than touching the parcels, that I would actually go back, I'd be in favor of going back to the original red circle, the smaller one, and allow that to be touching parcels and have that as the line. Because I think what's going to happen, people are going to see this and they're going to interpret it, and they're going to not vote for it. They're going to decline it because they think we're going to be pushing the boundaries of the UGB out in the future. So I'm afraid it's going to get voted down if the public don't have a really, really clear idea of what we're really saying here.
What I want to do is let every council member weigh in on all their issues. But I think that we're going to come back to that parcel map and probably have another bite at that parcel map before the conversation's over.
And can I just add too, I would encourage to look at the language in the measure, and it's in your Exhibit A to the resolution. That's the ballot, the specific ballot language. It's not that graphic. That graphic was illustrative to talk to you and, talk to the Planning Commission. So it's on pages, the bottom of page 4 and the top of page 5 is where that specific language, and we have it in strike through and bold to really be clear what is being proposed to go away and added to that measure.
And we'll probably pull that up at the end of the conversation for one more look at the actual changes. Councilmember Cater Thompson?
Yeah, just for clarification, when you're talking about a 6-7, that's the expansion area. That's not the 1,500.
No, the 6-7, so the exceptions that are called out in the general plan, for any expansion of the UGB to be approved by the city council, it has to be approved by the city council, 6 of the 7 council members approving it.
So with the 1,500 also? Or
Yeah,
just with the,
yeah.
it is?
Any of them. That's the existing language, and I think it's all but one of the exceptions. I think to correct a takings is
Right.
the only exception. 2 is the only one that doesn't have that, I believe.
Right, and the reason for that supermajority requirement that the voters have approved in approving these past measures is to make sure that there's very strong council support when they choose to take action without going back to the voters to expand the UGB. And based on all the other requirements, it's not just the supermajority vote. There's a bunch of very particular findings that need to be made that would demonstrate, if you look at the findings, they demonstrate that the purpose, that the effect of making that expansion is consistent with the purposes of that exception, whether it be affordable housing, whether it be for ag supporting uses, whether it be for transit-oriented development. So it's added discretion that the council would retain that it currently has under the UGB to make changes without going back to the voters, but with a pretty high bar procedurally of taking that action, both with the supermajority and making the findings.
So there's
And
no
you- Go ahead.
There's no difference between the 1,500 or the expansion area as far as the number. It's still 6-7.
Correct. We're not proposing a change to the requirement for a 6/7 vote, a
Okay,
supermajority.
So just for clarification, so when this passes, we're specifically looking at the 1,500, at least I am, and that would be come to the council, and then we would approve it at a 6/7, correct? To expand the.
Wherever the language ends up being at the end of tonight, and whatever is approved by the voters, that would set the maximum area in this corner that the UGB could be expanded in the future, and it would be required to have a supermajority of the council to do it, and it would require making findings that are outlined in that exception in the general plan.
As the measures drafted now in your package, it's not the 1,500 feet, it's that half-mile radius and then smoothed out so that the area that's subject to potential expansion is regular and not split within parcel boundaries. And the other thing I think it's maybe helpful to remember is that the focus on the transit-oriented development area around the new Corona station is to take advantage of the grant that we have to specifically plan that area and also to provide for a low vehicle miles traveled, more intensified development that has been mentioned by members of the public, can be walking communities consistent with our climate change response objectives and other general plan policies that are being developed and will be brought forward as part of that. So that's why the focus on that area, and the potential for expanding it. That is just a potential. It's not a commitment. So as to be able to really do a robust, specific plan exercise and see what makes sense. This would provide flexibility for that.
Okay, thank you. And as far as, is this the time to talk about a committee? Or do you want other comments first?
Let's get through the comments first.
Okay.
Thanks. And Councilmember Barnacle?
Yeah, I'm supportive of pretty much everything that's come forward. I appreciate the Planning Commission suggesting to smooth things out along Eli Road. The parcel that's been removed, I could be either way on that. The one benefit that I could see from it is it's actually like a contiguous parcel that gets us from the smart path all the way to Eli Road. And so from a connectivity standpoint, it feels like it might be worth putting in there. But I can go either way on that, and I'll defer to what the other council members feel. Personally, I'm not concerned about the public's view on this because the alternative of voting against this is that we don't have a UGB at all. And like when you look at UGB yard signs, they say stop sprawl. So like there's going to be the message is going to be really, really crystal clear to the public what they're voting for and ultimately what what a vote against it actually means. I would be happy to serve on a committee to draft the support statement. I've got some extra time right now. I'm on parental leave, so painting rooms and doing things like that, and I'm happy to work on this. It's something that, this is like why I studied city planning. When I was working on the SMART campaign, it was like I didn't love trains, but I loved the idea of walkable communities. So thank you, Dwayne, for going right to my heart. I marked my bingo card, my Dwayne Bellinger bingo card with the Peter Calthorpe reference, and I'm happy to see this go forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Healy, comments?
Thank you. So I'm supportive of this as well. I wanted to share a story that is probably beyond the memory of certainly anyone on staff, and I don't think anyone on the council was serving at that point either. Excuse me. But in the run-up to the current general plan, our general plan administrator stood at the dais and was telling us that the urban growth boundary will expire at the end of 2018, and so we'd stay within the urban growth boundary until then. And then, these are my words, not hers, but then it was going to be the Oklahoma land rush. And the council unanimously said, no. We want to stay within the existing 1998 urban growth boundary for the duration of what's now the current general plan. And that's what happened. So that's where how we got here tonight. And then we placed that on the ballot in 2010 for people to extend the life. And back in those days, we thought we had to have CEQA, but I'm glad there's an exception that's been discovered. We just tiered off of the general plan EIR at that time, but we don't have that yet, so I'm glad an exception exists. And we did, in 2010, delegate our 5 council members to write and sign the ballot argument, and that worked fine. And I'd also be willing to serve on that committee again. Just a couple of other comments. I think that the fact that we're removing the reference to the 3 other urban growth expansion areas probably helps ameliorate some of the concern about this one getting a little bit bigger. But I would say that I think, and I know this doesn't need to be in the document before us tonight, but I think a future council will expect a very, very high quality proposal there. And I'm especially want to see local serving businesses because, SMART's a great commute option, but you don't write it to take the kids to school or go grocery shopping or any of those other things. So there needs to be more in the way of local services right in that neighborhood to avoid this, keep this from being a real auto-centric development. And then my personal preference would be, and I'm a little bit confused here because staff is telling us that the graphic is just illustrative, but then we had legislative language that was referencing specific parcel numbers, and I'm having a hard time squaring that. So yeah, I'll let you respond to that in a second, but and I would appreciate that. But my preference, as I said before, would be to remove all the areas that were light blue on either of the 2 graphics. And I think that would, but I'm willing to go with what the council majority wants on that. But I think that would probably calm down some of the fears of urbanizing Eli Road. Thank you.
I think my comment about it being illustrative, I just meant that map is not an exhibit to the ballot measure. So the narrative with the specific parcel number setting the boundary of Corona Road, Eli Road, Smart Rail Tracks, but excluding parcels north of and creating a line with parcel numbers. It was.
So if we wanted to exclude all the light blue parcels in either one, we'd have to call those out by parcel number in that language.
Or we would say at least we could say, and at least a portion of each parcel included must be located within a half-mile radius of the rail transit station, and kind of get rid of that larger boundary out to Eli. So I think we can do that, but that's what I meant by illustrative. Is just it's not an exhibit to the ballot measure.
Councilmember Posake, you good?
I'm good. I agree with Councilmember Barnacle in the sense of not being concerned whether that, I think it's a 19.7 acre parcel that was deleted by the Planning Commission, whether that's there or not. I'm okay either way.
And Yeah, and I would, I think, be inclined to delete all the light blue sections from both mapping to more conform with the half-mile radius and everything that, where any parcel that touched the half-mile radius got a dark blue, but anything that didn't get touch the half-mile radius didn't need to be included in the parcel list. And that would keep us further away. But I also have great confidence that the specific plan measure and any and the fact that no development will occur without an exception being declared at 6/7 of a council. My worry is we'll never get to 6/7 no matter how good the project is. And I had mulled over proposing that a simple majority could allow for this whole exception to go, because it's the area near a train station that we want to focus anything that happens. But I think a 6/7 will allow us the best possible development to occur. So I'm willing to have that remain in here. I've jotted down the terms that we're changing in here, and we're not changing the UGB, and that was one of the things. We're changing the life of it. We're changing the radius. The proposal is to change the radius to half mile. The proposal is to delete 3 of the 4 expansion areas. Orderly boundaries was one question, and maybe we have to come back to that. Transit oriented was, I think, a general consensus. And then the ballot arguments, the last one we separate. Does anyone have any, want to make comment on any of those particular things? The term, the half mile, the 4 down to 1, and transit oriented, and then orderly boundaries, I think, where we want to have one more piece of conversation. Does anybody have a comment on anything other than orderly boundary? Could we pop up the dual planning committee one? And
can I ask a question, Judy?
Please.
So on that topic, some of those parcels have easements that come off of Eli Road. If we bring in parcel like for example, the 4 blue parcels that are sort of long there, and then the 2, those ones, there's an easement that goes through those 4 blue parcels to get to the 2 sort of less long other ones. Do we, like, does that easement then stay in terms of giving us access to those parcels? So we're going to have this little, like, shoddy easement there, probably 28-foot easement that goes from.
Or is that owned property?
I'm sorry.
I'm looking at my Onyx Hunt map right now on my phone. That's why I'm knowing.
I'm
this
not
stuff.
tracking the location of the easements, but no action the council is contemplating taking tonight would affect any easements, either easements in gross to a person or easements appurtenant to an adjacent property. Those would remain. But it might be helpful. Can you?
I think what Councilmember Barnacle is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that these 4 parcels, the blue parcels here,
Yep.
they have some or all of them provide easement to access these parcels?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like, if that easement's going to stay, and we're going to increase the intensity of the development on the parcels that are accessed from that, there's going to be a very small, narrow road that right now is serving 2 homes that could be serving several more, right? And so my question to staff and for the council to consider is like, is that something that is going to like persist beyond this? Because we won't have any land use authority over the parcels that have the easement, right? And so they could, that's my question, I guess, right? So
the easements would remain, but remember the fundamental function of the UGB is to limit the area that gets served by city utilities and can become under the city's land use approval authority. But the easements would remain and not be changed by this.
As the owner of the property.
Can I beg your indulgence?
No, I think we have staff's ability to answer the question. And I think maybe the answer is a quality development would require prevention of things that you're concerned about, continued access. I don't think we'd get the development in here if it had substandard streets or substandard density or anything in that nature. And that's the goal of the specific plan, is to generate that.
That's also often addressed by things like pre-annexation agreements, which are kind of like development agreements. That because it's, as we talked about recently, because the greatest discretionary act on the part of the council is the annexation decision, it's often important to consider infrastructure and sort of development envelope kinds of considerations before they grant that.
Okay, I guess I'll jump in then. I guess I want to see, I appreciate having the contiguous local control on Eli Road to make sure that any access points that come off of Eli Road are adequate, because we won't have land use authority over those 4 blue parcels that could become access points to a future development project. I guess that's what I'm concerned about.
Would you be comfortable with those 4 parcels being light blue? Not being included in this exception area?
I mean, I'm going to go with what the council wants, but I would lean toward the planning commission recommendation. It feels like a mistake to have one section of Eli Road that is not city like responsibility, but the other pieces are.
So, in the context that we're trying to do a transit-oriented development, the only reason to go to half mile is to conform with other bodies, other agencies' definitions of transit-oriented developments. I'd like to get a straw poll on if we everything we see in these 2 graphics that is light blue, combine and call that our recommendation for this. So that would include the left hand and the right hand, anything that's light blue. And that would give comfort to those who are worried we're exceeding, we're pushing up, even though we hold full discretion, even though we hold full specific plan review, even though any development will get grilled like nobody's business. We can show that anything outside of the half mile, if it doesn't touch the half mile line, it doesn't get preferential treatment in this. So in a straw poll, are we happy going to all light, combining all? Does everybody understand the straw poll? And can I get comments? Councilmember Posake. Microphone, please.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but as far as I do, I think I'm in favor of everything being blue or dark blue or purple or whatever color that is.
Eligible, even though it's outside of the half mile TOD.
Yeah, I like the arguments for keeping one side of the street in Petaluma if it ever comes to that. And also, it seems like what I interpreted what was said is that we're gonna get a little more protection of those easements and such.
Anybody else have a comment on that? Councilmember Healy?
Yeah, no, as I said before, I'd exclude all the parcels that are light blue on either graphic.
And your straw vote?
I'd say I'd back off the smaller red circle if we have just touch it. I would back off to just the smaller red circle, and the properties that are touching that red circle is the only ones that I would actually think about.
So you're in the all light blue camp.
Yeah, so all the light blue and more. In fact, all the ones on Eli Road I would include on that also. I would just make them all light blue or white to be inclusive on that. It's very clear. We're only going to do that corner. That's all we're going to do.
So for clarification, that's keeping the language essentially as it is with a 1,500-foot radius. That's that smaller corner. Is that what you're saying, the smaller red line?
Right, as long as it's when it's touching, yes, as long as
If
the
it's a-
parcel is touching that red
So
line.
that's no change. That's the existing language.
I hear the straw vote for a third way of slicing the pie. And so, Councilmember Cater Thompson, are you with the 1,500, Councilmember Shribs? Are you with the 2,600 with the light blues that are represented here?
I'm with so we have an extra expansion area, so I'm supportive of the larger.
Okay. And so anything outside of that would be light blue?
Yes.
Okay. And Councilmember Barnacle?
I'm going to be in favor of the Planning Commission recommendation.
Well, we're all over the place, so how are we going to resolve that? One of the things is we can place all our trust in the Planning Commission recommendation, knowing that we have specific plan process to go through, development plan to go through, and that this is like a head nod straw poll. Does that work for everyone? I mean, okay, I think we're kind of overanalyzing perhaps, and so I think that settles the that element of this, the orderly boundary part, and that's as staff brought the proposal to us. Leave it alone. Don't change it. Am I right?
So I think what I hear you saying is the map that shows PC recommendation. So it would be written in such a way that would allow all the parcels a potential, does not obligate, potential for any future expansion for TOD in this area to go to all of the purple parcels.
Is that the way the proposal is presented already
Yes,
to us
that's
tonight?
the way it's written
so
currently.
We're staying with that. That's a good thing. And I really appreciate you reiterating nothing is guaranteed, no council privilege is given away, and all rights remain with the city for a later decision point. So hopefully that's a bow on that for now. And then the remaining item is who would like to participate in the writing of the ballot argument. And I've heard two voices saying yes, and I would like to participate in that. And we need to have less than a quorum to form this ad hoc. So 3 is less than a quorum. Is by straw poll, is everybody going to be okay with those 3? Good. Okay. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
I believe I saved, and Mr. Danley teases me for never throwing anything away, but I believe I have the 2010 ballot argument that I can share.
Okay. So
I've referred to Councilmember Healy as our unofficial librarian and historian.
Have we covered all of the council conversation? We're good. This is a big deal tonight. This is a big important thing, and I'd like to invite staff in one more time to anything you need.
I just want to make sure that the other modification would be to section 2 of Exhibit A, which is that reference to planning boundaries map, and it refers to Figure 2-1 land use, and that would be stricken because it doesn't show on that graphic. So that's just a error in a reference.
Right.
And I had just 2 other things to make sure we're clear on. One is it would be helpful to identify what our target return back to the council with the draft argument is, and also if the council is going to take a motion to appoint a subcommittee to also assign it the duty of preparing the rebuttal argument that won't have time to come back to the council if we receive an argument against the measure.
Can that be one motion or multiple? Can that be one motion or multiple motions?
It can be, as long as the votes are the same, you can bundle them.
So long as you know how you're going to make that motion, I think it can be one. I think we've covered every element, and Yeah, I think we're covered on that. So, Councilmember Barnacle, do you want to make a stab there?
Sure. Move approval of the staff recommendation with figure 2.1 stricken from attachment exhibit
A.
And appoint Councilmember Healy and Mayor McDonald and myself to an ad hoc committee to craft the support statement for the ballot measure and a rebuttal statement should that be warranted.
And a return date for review of?
And a return date of next meeting for the ballot measure.
Well, how far in advance of the next meeting would we have to have it prepared?
Next week.
One more out.
I think we have the eligibility to go one
round.
meeting out,
Okay.
which was listed in the staff report that
Sure.
we could, or in the schedule.
So August 5th.
August
Thank you.
5th.
And that if a rebuttal is needed, it will not return to council, right?
I'll second that.
I love that our clerk has this photographic memory of every motion and can pull this all together with the team. So that's the motion.
I'll second.
The second from Cater Thompson. Roll call.
Barnacle,
Aye.
Gator Thompson,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Posake,
Yes.
Shribs,
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. That was definitely a highlight here. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.